Hey guys, tonight we begin in the velvet shadows of a palace that no longer stands, where the scent of myrrh clings to linen sheets, and the first light of dawn trickles through slitted windows carved to let in only Rite's blessing. You're not just anyone here, you're the Pharaoh, the living god, the son of the sun. And your day starts now. Soft footsteps echo through the marble corridors as your servants, yes, plural, approach your sleeping chamber. You lie on a gilded bed, more art than furniture, your head supported by a carved alabaster headrest, believed to chase away evil dreams. A cat yawns nearby, sacred and indifferent. One of the priests has already checked the stars to confirm the omens. Spoiler, they're mixed. You groggily open your eyes, not to scroll through messages or hit snooze, but because a young boy with a shaved head and coal-lined eyes is tapping a sistrum gently. He's here to wake you with music, not panic. Across the hall, someone's already grinding natron salts for your bath. Today's schedule: divine rituals, judicial decisions, a lion hunt, and maybe a quiet nap under a fig tree if the universe behaves. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is. Leave a comment and let me know. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air is cooler than usual this morning, just enough to raise goosebumps on your skin as you sit upright and extend your hands. One servant pulls back the linen canopy while another offers a silver bowl of scented water. They don't speak unless spoken to. Not because you're mean, though you can be, but because you're divine and your silence is sacred. You slip your feet into sandals that cost more than most people's homes, though they'll never leave the polished stone floors. The hallway is lined with painted murals of your victories, some real, others aspirational. You pass one showing you defeating an entire Hittite army with the single bow. Sure, why not? You arrive at your bathing chamber. It isn't just a place to get clean, it's a temple in itself. The water has been fetched from the Nile before sunrise, filtered through cloth, embroidered with your royal cartouche, and poured into a copper tub, polished so bright you can see your reflection. It shimmers like something out of a dream, one you're obligated to live. As you step in, the water is warm and perfumed with lotus and crushed cinnamon bark. Servants approach with soft linen cloths and gently scrub your limbs. Every motion is ritualized. Every rinse is sacred. There's even a special chant they whisper under their breath, a hymn to cleanse the soul of last night's dreams. Because when you're Pharaoh, even dreams can be politically inconvenient. While you soak, a eunuch reads aloud from a scroll of omens. One bird flew east, which is good. Another nested inside the sacred fig tree, which could mean famine or fertility, depends on the interpreter. Historians still argue whether these omens were deeply believed or just political theater, but either way, the tone of your entire day hinges on the flight pattern of a pigeon. You dry off with towels stitched from the finest flax, spun by temple virgins dedicated to Hathor. Then comes the oil. Your body is anointed with thick layers of imported unguents, frankincense, myrrh, balsam, each meant to protect you from evil spirits, aging, and dry skin. A servant combs through your wig. Yes, even gods wear wigs woven with gold thread and black goat hair. Your eyelids are painted with coal and malachite in bold divine lines. The coal wards off eye infections. The green reminds people you're not just a man, you're the living embodiment of Horus, and also very fashionable. Next, your crown. Today it's the white crown of Upper Egypt, combined with the red of Lower Egypt, the double crown, or Shent. a solid gold vulture and cobra rise from the front. Together they symbolize the goddesses Nekbet and Wadjet, your celestial bodyguards. Wearing it feels like balancing a gilded anvil on your head, but you pretend it's comfortable. Because you're Pharaoh, and your posture, like your decisions, must always be unshakable. Lastly, the crook and flail are placed in your hands, tools of shepherds and symbols of kings, one to guide, the other to punish. Everyone in your court knows which you prefer. Now adorned, oiled, and reinforced with cosmic symbolism, you walk barefoot across alabaster floors flanked by fan-bearers waving ostrich plumes. The scent of jasmine follows in your wake. You pass scribes who bow so low their noses nearly touch the stone. No one looks you in the eye. Not because they fear you, but because to do so would be like staring at the midday sun. Or so they say. But as you make your way to the temple for morning offerings, something shifts in your chest. A flicker, a reminder. Beneath the oils and gems and godhood, you're just a human in a very shiny costume. And you're expected to hold up the sky. Your stomach growls audibly. Someone hears it. They make a note to fetch roasted duck and honeyed dates the moment you return. Divine or not, breakfast must be served. Tomorrow you'll do this all again, but for now your day as the living God has just begun. You're not just dressed, you're consecrated. Each fold of linen and streak of malachite locks your identity in place like the latches of a tomb. As you stride toward the inner court, the rising sun glints off electrum in your headdress and gilded sandals. Birds flit through hanging gardens, oblivious to your divinity. And why wouldn't they be? They're sacred too, just less burdened by politics. Today's first obligation is spiritual, of course. You're heading to the palace chapel, your personal link to the divine realm. It's not so much a stop by and light a candle place as it is a full-blown ritual theater. Two priests already barefoot and fragrant with incense await you by the gate. One carries scrolls of hymns, the other holds a tray of wine bread, milk, and honey. Your breakfast, not yet. These are for the gods. As you enter, silence cloaks the room. Every wall glows with sacred art depictions of Ra sailing across the heavens. Osiris judging the dead, and naturally you kneeling and offering gifts to deities who look suspiciously like your relatives. That's not arrogance. That's branding. You prostrate yourself before the altar, not because anyone expects you to, they already think you're divine, but because even gods must bow to older gods. You pour the libations and recite the words, ancient syllables whose meanings have long blurred into sound. Your priests chant beside you, voices low, rhythmic, hypnotic. Smoke curls upward in lazy spirals seeking the sky. Historians still argue whether pharaohs truly believed in this choreography of gods and cosmic debt, or if it was mostly performance. But belief in your case is irrelevant. You are the belief. The sun rose today because you woke up and prayed. That's the job. As you finish the rites, your hand lingers on the statue of Amun-Ra. Not out of devotion exactly, but because you feel something in the stone warmth maybe. Or expectation. You can never quite tell. Leaving the chapel, you catch your reflection in a polished bronze disc. Your face is painted, your crown steady. But under the liner and oils, you glimpse something more fragile. A young man or woman, if you're Hatshepsut, navigating a system that calls you a god, but treats you like a battery. A power source that must never flicker. Now come the morning councils. You're led into the audience chamber, a vast hall, lined with lotus-shaped columns and flickering torches. At the far end sits your golden throne, flanked by carved lions with ruby eyes. Above you, hawk-winged carvings spread across the ceiling. guardians against false words and bad omens, which is hilarious considering what's about to be said here. One by one, your advisors enter. The vizier first, your right hand and chief administrator. He bows so deeply it looks like his spine might snap. He opens a scroll tax collection reports from the Delta. Farmers are behind. Again. The floods were late and now the granaries are thin. The treasury's unhappy. You make a mental note to reassign the treasurer, possibly to a goat shed. Next come the military scribes, border skirmishes in Nubia, some bandits near the turquoise mines. Nothing fatal yet, but they want more spears. Of course they do. Then a priest from Memphis who insists the temple needs new cedar beams from Lebanon. You raise an eyebrow. He lowers his gaze. You'll allow it, but he'll owe you. And finally, diplomats. One from Punt brings gifts panther pelts, ivory exotic birds that squawk at inappropriate times. Another from Mitanni bears a letter from their king sealed in gold and honeycomb wax. He offers his daughter in marriage. Again. That's the third this month. You accept the letter but don't commit. You already have 4 wives, 2 sisters, and possibly an aunt in your harem. Things are crowded. You listen to it all, nod occasionally, speak rarely. When you do speak, your words are final. That's not arrogance, it's structure. To be Pharaoh is to be the last word in the first silence, to be the still point around which the universe spins. Of course, there are dangers in being the axis. You dismiss the court and return to your private study, but not alone. Your spies disguised as scribes and servants trail behind you like shadows. One kneels to whisper a general has been seen speaking with a priest behind a closed curtain. Another reports that your younger half-brother has been making noise in the temple wine stores. Just noise, you ask. The spy shrugs. You smile, but it doesn't reach your eyes. At this point in your reign, you know better than to fear outright rebellion. It's the little things that get you. A dropped earring in the queen's chamber. A goat entrail turned the wrong way during augury. A foreign ambassador who declines the wine but accepts the fruit. These are the warning signs, and you're fluent in them all. You pause for a moment in your garden, a rare indulgence. The papyrus rustles in the breeze. Sacred ibises strut between the date palms. A gardener bows low as you pass his back. Bent so far his forehead brushes the soil. He's not even allowed to look at you. You reach out and pluck a fig. It's perfectly ripe, sweet, real. And for 1 second, you're just a man eating a piece of fruit. But only for a second. You wipe your fingers on a linen cloth embroidered with lotus flowers, stitched by temple weavers who believe even thread holds sacred meaning. The fig's sweetness lingers, but your mind is already racing. You're Pharaoh. You don't get to savor fruit. You are the fruit ripe for praise, always one bruise away from rot. Next comes the most dangerous part of your day being seen. Not by gods or advisors, but by your people. You mount the ceremonial chariot, its wheels gilded and groaning from too many processions. Today's journey takes you from the palace to a temple under construction, one that, if all goes well, will be completed before your death. You'll lay the cornerstone yourself, of course, but first you must be visible, tangible, believable. The Royal Avenue is already lined with spectators. They've been waiting since dawn, fanning themselves with palm leaves, jostling for a glimpse. Your appearance isn't just spectacle, it's reassurance. If you look well-fed, rested, and divine, they'll believe the Nile will flood, the grain will grow, and the gods are happy. No pressure. You wave slowly, arm extended, like a god dispensing light. Your chariot rolls past priests, merchants, mothers with infants, farmers, and dusty linen. They chant your 5 names aloud, a chorus of loyalty or obligation. It's hard to tell. You smile anyway. Then you notice something odd. A child in the crowd isn't bowing, not ignoring you, just staring, unblinking, eyes wide. Not with awe, but with knowing. A chill pricks your skin, though the sun blazes above. You blink. The child vanishes into the crowd. Nothing more is said, but the image lingers. Strange how one glance can unnerve a living god. You reach the temple where builders halt their chiseling. Dust rises from unfinished columns. You take the gold ceremonial mallet, decorative, absurdly heavy, and drive the first peg into the earth. It thunks with finality. The priests chant. Incense clouds the air. The cornerstone is blessed. The moment is recorded in hieroglyphs on a waiting slab of limestone. Year 14 of His Majesty living image of Ra builder of eternity. That last part is more aspiration than fact. Still, it has a nice ring to it. You linger at the site pretending to inspect the architecture. But really you're watching your back. Always. Even among priests and masons, trust is a scarce luxury. Everyone smiles too quickly. Everyone bows too low. Even the incense smells like warning smoke today. You finally return to the palace chariot wheels, groaning like a tired warhorse. Before you can rest, another ritual awaits the midday meal. But in truth, it's no meal, it's performance art. You recline in the banquet hall beneath painted ceilings of stars and hawks. Gold bowls filled with dates, figs, roasted duck, honey-glazed locusts. Yes, delicacy and breads, shaped like the eye of Horus, are arranged before you. Musicians pluck harps. Dancers twirl wrists adorned with bronze bangles that jingle like rainfall. Your great royal wife sits to your left. Her makeup is flawless, her expression unreadable. She's your sister, or cousin, or both. The bloodline is complicated and alarmingly circular. Across from you sits a foreign ambassador. He speaks with careful precision, praising the elegance of your court, the abundance of your granaries, the beauty of your daughters. You nod politely. He's here to negotiate a trade treaty, but first he must endure 5 courses of symbolic dishes and 5 rounds of metaphoric praise. This is diplomacy in Egypt. You don't sign scrolls, you share pomegranates. As the ambassador rises to toast your radiant eternity, your wife leans in slightly and whispers, "He's lying." You raise an eyebrow. She smiles serenely, sipping from a goblet rimmed in turquoise. Is she warning you? Mocking you? Plotting against you? Possibly all 3. Later in the courtyard, you retreat to your favorite columned pavilion. Shade dapples the stone floor. You remove your crown just for a moment and lean back. The wind stirs the papyrus scrolls beside you. It feels almost peaceful. Almost. But a servant appears, eyes downcast. A dream interpreter requests your audience, Divine One. You sigh. This again. In comes an old man cloaked in linen so thin it's nearly translucent. He bows, then lifts a wax tablet. Your Majesty, you were seen walking backward into his temple while the moon bled and cats danced upon the roof. You pause. Whose dream was this? He blinks. Mine, my lord. You blink back. Then you should be worried. He pales, mutters apologies, and backs out of the chamber. You almost laugh. Almost. Later, you allow yourself a private game of Senate, the board laid out on polished alabaster. Your opponent is your youngest daughter, sharp, clever, barely 12. She plays aggressively, cornering your tokens with unnerving efficiency. You're cheating, you say mildly. She beams. I'm winning. You smile. A real one this time. But the moment is fleeting. A scroll arrives. There's unrest in the eastern quarry. Workers are refusing rations. A scribe fell into a shaft. You rise, the game abandoned. Being Pharaoh means never finishing anything personal. Not a meal, not a game, not even a thought. As evening deepens, torches are lit. Their flames dance against sandstone, casting long shadows across the courtyard. Somewhere a servant whispers a prayer. Somewhere else a cat purrs. The gods are watching. They always are. You return to your inner sanctum. The servants are waiting to undress you. The bath is ready. The oil's warmed. The bed turned. The sacred headrest fluffed. You sigh, staring out into the indigo night. The moon is full, and for once not bleeding. The day retreats into shadows, and now as the living Horus, you must prepare to become Osiris in the realm of sleep. It's not just rest, it's a cosmic shift. Nighttime for a pharaoh is not downtime. It's a spiritual transfer of roles, a rehearsal for eternity. You're led back into the bathing chamber where warm water has been poured over heated stones, scented with lotus and cedar. You soak in silence, skin prickling, as attendants pour sacred water over your shoulders. You're being ritually cleansed not just of dust and sweat, but of worldly impurities gathered during a day spent balancing chaos and cosmic order. One priest murmurs protective spells under his breath. Another silently lights resin incense in a corner brazier, the blue smoke coiling like a serpent. Your great royal wife does not join you. She's elsewhere, perhaps, in her own sanctuary, perhaps praying that her son remains your favorite. Perhaps quietly sharpening her plans. She's loyal, yes, but in a way that always seems 1 degree too calculated. A servant approaches with your linen sleeping robes woven so fine they could pass for mist. He dresses you without meeting your gaze. As always, your regalia is removed with ceremonial reverence. The double crown is cradled in a box lined with ostrich feathers. The crook and flail, your symbols of authority, are placed beside your bed on an altar to Mayat, the goddess of balance. Even in sleep, you must be seen as upholding order. You glance at the stone pillow. Its shape is meant to raise your head, just so preventing evil spirits from entering through your ears. Practical, uncomfortable, very Egyptian. As you lie down, the air is warm but carries a hush. Torches flicker against painted walls, scenes of Ra's nightly voyage through the underworld, crocodile-headed demons, serpent boats, the field of reeds. Your life, your death, and your rebirth already mapped out like a celestial itinerary. And then comes the dream, or rather the dreaming. For pharaohs, sleep is not just physical repair, it's divine convergence. In sleep, your Ba spirit detaches from your body and soars across the heavens. You may find yourself speaking to Ra himself or to a long-dead ancestor whose advice comes in the form of riddles. Or worse, omission. Last week you dreamed of drowning, a sea without horizon, no land, just an endless sinking. When you told the dream priest, he said it signified a hidden betrayal. You haven't slept well since. Tonight, though, you fall fast and far. You are standing in a garden. The sky is green. Trees hum with music. Your mother is there, no older than 15. She holds out a pomegranate. You must choose, she says, but you cannot know what for. You wake with the start. The chamber is still dark. A servant rests against the doorframe, eyes shut but alert. You shift. You feel no older, no wiser, just heavier. The dream has left a film across your thoughts like a fog on the Nile. You reach for your tablet and sketch the pomegranate. Just in case. You rise early. It's still before dawn. As expected, your body servants arrive like ghosts. They apply fresh coal, anoint your wrist with lotus oil, and whisper that the high priest has asked for your presence. Of course he has. You're led through a side passage to the Temple of Amun. The inner sanctum is lit only by flickering torchlight. The priest is waiting, hands raised, and prayer body powdered with sacred chalk. He does not speak directly. Instead, he draws in the dust. Symbols of air, fire, flood, a hawk, a broken reed. He's telling you that something is coming, something unbalanced. You ask if it's about your dream. He flinches, then nods. He instructs you to perform a cleansing rite at the edge of the necropolis. Not for the kingdom. For yourself. This is rare. You agree. You arrive at the necropolis as the sun kisses the eastern horizon. Tombs stretch out like teeth across the desert, silent and waiting. You are guided to a shallow pool lined with black stone. Here priests pour water from sacred urns over your hands, your feet, your heart. You chant the words, I am pure. I am divine. I hold chaos in my shadow and silence in my name. It doesn't feel like enough, but it never does. As you return to the palace, barefoot across warm sand, you feel something loosen in your chest. Not relief. More like surrender. The kind that comes from understanding you are not the master of these rites. You are their servant. You're just a man trapped in the myth of yourself. Later that morning, scribes bring news the temple construction is ahead of schedule. The ambassador has requested another audience. The floodwaters are rising early this year, and yet all you can think about is that dream. The pomegranate. The choice. The silence. Your Ba may have returned, but it brought questions with it. And you, Pharaoh of the two lands, must smile, wave, judge, punish, bless, and rule, as if you've never once felt doubt, because to do otherwise is to risk unraveling the world. The sun now rises in full, casting long golden rays through the palace's lattice work. Outside your window, priests chant blessings to Ra, their voices blending with the morning wind, like distant drums echoing from a sacred dream. You sit perfectly still on your throne of cedarwood and gold in the judgment hall. The floor beneath your feet has been swept 3 times already, and yet it still feels like something might stain it. Something unseen, inevitable. Your Pharaoh embodiment of Horus, protector of Mayat, and today you must become its judge. 3 courtiers stand before you, their backs stiff with fear, their robes trembling like reeds in flood season. The vizier reads the charges: a nobleman accused of stealing grain during a famine, a merchant caught bribing a temple scribe, and a lowly servant who dared to insult a priest's cat. The cat, by the way, survived. You listen, eyes impassive. You ask no questions. You don't need to. Their fates have already begun to unfold in your mind, not because you're cruel, but because justice in Egypt isn't about fairness. It's about balance. Cosmic alignment. Every lie, every crime is a ripple in the river of order. Your job is to flatten the waters again. You pronounce judgment. One is stripped of title, another fined his entire estate. The cat insulter assigned to clean temple floors barefoot for a year. You think that last one might secretly be the happiest. There are worse fates, like being reborn as a dung beetle. Historians still argue whether pharaohs were truly involved in these minor cases or whether it was all symbolic. But symbolism in your case is reality. You are Mayat's stand-in. If you yawned at the wrong moment, crops might fail. If you smiled too long, the Nile might dry. A servant appears kneeling low. He bears news the tomb architects request your blessing for a new design. The angle of the burial shaft has shifted, and some fear it may now face the realm of Set, the god of chaos. You sigh. Of course it does. Off you go. The tomb site lies on the edge of the Valley of the Kings, a place where the living rarely linger. Even in daylight, the air hums with presence ancient and waiting. You descend into the semi-excavated tomb, flanked by architects holding scrolls and sketches. They babble about angles, sacred geometry, astral alignments. You pretend to listen, but your eyes fixate on the empty sarcophagus. It's yours. Not today, not next month. But eventually it will be. There it sits, cool, smooth granite carved with prayers you approved yourself. You stare into it too long and catch your own reflection in the polished black stone. Your coal-lined eyes look back wide and mortal. One of the priests coughs. You blink, nod, and say, "Adjust the shaft by 7 degrees." They bow and praise your wisdom. You walk away already, forgetting the details, already remembering the chill. Outside the tomb, a hot wind scours the hillside. The sun beats down. You feel the weight of your crown again, heavy on your brow, though you're not even wearing it. You reach up to rub your temples and realize the headache has been there for 3 days. Back at the palace, lunch is set on a terrace overlooking the Nile. You're served grilled fish wrapped in lotus leaves, honey-glazed quail, lentils, and melon slices. You chew methodically. A scribe reads foreign correspondence aloud. Hittite tensions a trade dispute in Byblos rumors of a Persian envoy sniffing around the delta. It never ends. Halfway through the meal, your daughter appears, the youngest, barefoot, sun-kissed, clutching a basket of date cakes. She curtsies, awkwardly still learning, and says, "I saved you the soft ones." You smile. You're the only one who does. She beams. It's the truest moment you've had all day. You ask her to sit beside you. She does, swinging her legs as she watches boats glide along the Nile. "Will I be Pharaoh?" she asks suddenly. You nearly choke on a melon seed. "You're a princess," you say. "So was Hatshepsut," she counters, proud of her pronunciation. You nod, smiling more out of nervousness than reassurance. "Then you must study your glyphs and your dreams." She doesn't respond, just watches the boats. Later that day, your scribes present building plans for a new temple. This one, they claim, will rival Karnak. You glance at the drawings. Colonnades, obelisks, a shrine that will house your image for eternity. You sign off without speaking. Truthfully, you don't care about temples anymore. Not today. You're more worried about the drought rumors drifting up from the southern villages. No rain, no flood, no grain. And people don't pray to a pharaoh who can't feed them. You summon the priests, instruct them to hold ceremonies invoking Hapi, god of the Nile. You command extra rations to be distributed, just enough to calm the panic without draining the reserves. Every grain is a gamble. As dusk approaches, you withdraw to your personal sanctuary. Not the throne room, not the inner sanctum. The real sanctuary, a modest terrace shaded by fig trees. No guards, no scrolls. Just silence. Just stars starting to prick the velvet sky one by one. You lie back on a cool stone bench staring upward. The wind picks up. A faint scent of frankincense lingers in the air. For a moment, you imagine a different life. A farmer, a stonecutter, even a scribe. A life without offerings, without endless decisions, without pretending you're a god. But then you feel it again, that subtle tug, that gravitational pull that says you are Pharaoh. The balance must be held. You don't get to break. And so you sit up, straighten your back, and summon the dream priest. It's going to be another long night. Night falls with a soft rustle like papyrus turning itself. The stars shimmer above the palace like 1,000 eyes, some watching, some judging, some long blind. You're in your chamber now, stripped of regalia, your limbs heavy from ritual and rulership. But there's still one final rite before you can rest. You must dream. Your dream priest arrives cloaked in linen so thin it seems woven from breath. He brings with him a carved cedar box inside dream tokens. Small objects, a falcon feather, a lapis scarab, a wooden miniature of a snake biting its tail. Each symbol represents a theme the gods might choose to whisper about tonight. You choose the scarab. He nods gravely and sets it on your pillow right beside the headrest, engraved with the glyphs for protection, vision, and rebirth. Beneath the stone, your head will lie slightly elevated, just enough to keep the soul from slipping out too easily. The priest whispers, "May your ba travel safe and return whole." You nod, but don't respond. It's always like this before sleep, a strange mixture of dread and surrender. Because for Pharaoh, sleep is not escape. It's obligation. You're not just dreaming. You're working overtime in the underworld. You slip beneath the linen sheets so fine they rustle like wings and close your eyes. And the descent begins. You are in a boat gliding down a black river. On the shore, statues cry tears of fire. You are both king and corpse, both radiant and rotting. You hear your mother's voice. She's laughing or weeping, you can't tell. A jackal walks beside you, its eyes lit like twin moons. In the distance, you see a mirror that shows your face aging backward into bone. Then light. You awaken with a jolt. It's still night, but not completely. The chamber glows faintly with pre-dawn blue. Your temples are damp with sweat. Your heartbeat pounds with secrets you no longer remember. But beside you on the headrest, the scarab token is gone. You sit up. The dream priest is already waiting. He does not ask what you saw. He places a scroll before you already inked. From the temple of Ta, he says, "They dreamed it for you." You scan the hieroglyphs. They describe your exact dream boat river jackal mirror, word for word. You stare at the priest. How did they know? He simply replies, "Because you were expected." No further explanation is given. None is needed. You rise uneasy and begin your morning rites. This time they feel more urgent, because something is shifting. Later that morning, you meet with your architects again. They're working on a new funerary temple. They want to align the main pylon with Sirius, the star of rebirth. You nod distracted, still hearing the jackal's footsteps from your dream. "Make it taller," you say, "so the star can see me clearly." In your court that day, the vizier presents troubling news. A scribe in the Delta was caught forging tax receipts. Normally this wouldn't concern you, but the forged seal was yours. Someone wants to impersonate your will. The vizier is nervous. You dismiss him with a flick of your hand. But inside you're rattled. Someone is testing boundaries. Someone is forgetting that Pharaoh's words are not to be copied. They are cosmic law. You summon your elite guards, issue an order. Quiet. Lethal. The scribe will be removed before dusk and his name struck from all records. Not out of vengeance. Out of necessity. To preserve order. Ma'at must be maintained. That afternoon, you inspect the sacred barges being readied for the upcoming Opet festival. Enormous wooden boats painted in gold and lapis, draped in linens embroidered with verses from the Book of the Dead. The barge that will carry your image and that of Amun-Ra is nearly complete. You climb aboard to inspect it. The priests murmur blessings as you walk the length of the deck. But your hand brushes one of the railings and you recoil. It's damp. You smell it. Blood. old dried hidden in the seams of the wood. You say nothing, you nod to the priest. But when you return to the palace, you order a new barge constructed. Quietly, in secret. The one touched by blood must not carry the gods, or you. You dine that evening in silence. Your great royal wife joins you. She mentions the new harpist in the court orchestra, young, handsome, suspiciously charming. You raise an eyebrow. I'll have him reassigned to the quarry, you murmur. She smiles, but not kindly. The palace is too quiet after she leaves. You feel the presence of the gods again, not above you, but beside you, as though someone or something is standing just behind your shoulder watching. You walk the halls, past murals that show you smiting enemies embracing gods kneeling in death before your own divine image. It's narcissism as statecraft, but you didn't paint these. Others did, to immortalize you or control you. You wonder who will one day repaint your story, who will chisel out your name, who will misremember you on purpose. You return to your chamber and sit alone in the moonlight. The stars are watching. So is the scarab. The dream feels like a warning now, not a vision. Perhaps it was both. You think of the ancient proverb, Pharaoh rules not only his people but also their memory. You lie back, hands folded over your chest. Tonight you won't choose a dream token. Tonight you'll let the gods pick. And that somehow is even more terrifying. Morning breaks not with song, but with silence. The usual musicians are absent. Even the birds seem subdued, as if the air itself senses something askew. You wake with a dry mouth and the ghost of another dream dissolving behind your eyes. You remember nothing except the color blue and a sense of falling. Today begins with an omen. The high priest of Pia has sent a sealed scroll, red wax pressed with the eye of Ra. That symbol isn't for decoration. It means read this before you eat. You unroll the scroll as servants attend to your ablutions. Water trickles over your arms while your eyes scan the message. The Temple of Ta reports a strange phenomenon. A statue weeps, its painted eyes streaked with moisture overnight. It's not a leak, they say. It's divine. A warning, perhaps. Or grief. You don't react, but deep in your chest something unsettles. Breakfast is served flatbreads, shaped like onks, honeyed figs, slices of roasted goose. You eat sparingly, not from lack of appetite, but because you're calculating. Dream statue, blood on the barge. These things connect, not in the way of facts, but of patterns. And as Pharaoh, patterns are your currency. You summon your inner council. The vizier enters first, flanked by scribes carrying records and maps. The general of your personal guard follows, then the chief astrologer, and finally your great royal wife. Yes, she has a seat on the council now. You did not grant it. She claimed it. You sit at the head of the alabaster table carved with scenes of creation. The gods look down from the edges frozen in stone mid-blessing. The statue of Ptah, you say simply. Heads nod. Murmurs pass like ripples. We'll send offerings, the vizier suggests. That's not enough, your wife says. Statues don't cry for meat and myrrh. You glance at her. What do they cry for? Then she leans back. Truth. You stare. She holds your gaze. And somewhere in the back of your mind a reed snaps. You dismiss them. Alone you walk to the royal archives. Not the ceremonial library where scribes show off scrolls for visiting dignitaries. The real archives. The one with records so old their ink bleeds into the papyrus like bruises. You find the entry on weeping statues. It's not long. It mentions one in the reign of Djoser. It wept the night before his chief architect fell from the scaffolding and broke his spine. You close the scroll. Later that day, you visit the artisan quarter, not as a god king, but in a linen cloak, hooded and silent. Your guards shadow you discreetly, swords sheathed in silence. Here in the chalky air of stone dust and pigment men chisel your likeness by the dozens. You watch one sculptor at work. He's etching your nose into a limestone bust. It's flatter than it should be. He's never seen your face directly. Few have. The image he works from is drawn from memory ceremony and propaganda. Why the nose like that, you ask? He jumps. My lord, it's the way the gods look. Do the gods bleed he swallows? Only in dreams. You leave him with a small gold ring. Not as a reward, but as a test. If he tells anyone of your visit, he'll vanish. If he doesn't, he gets another ring. That's how you measure loyalty, not by vows, but by silence. That evening you return to the palace. Your wife greets you in the courtyard surrounded by attendants and scented with rosewater. She wears a crown of papyrus and lapis, a symbolic nod to fertility and wisdom. We need to speak, she says. You wave away the attendants. She walks with you through the garden past columns carved with stories of your victories, real and imagined. She stops beneath a sycamore fig tree. The gods are warning you, she says. And you're pretending not to hear them. I hear plenty, you reply. But you do nothing. I rule. You react. You're not sure if she's challenging you or pleading with you. Maybe both. You ask, what would you have me do? Tear down the temples. Rewrite the stars. She steps closer. Look at your own court. Your builders fear shadows. Your priests hedge their prophecies. Even your dreams betray you. You say nothing. She softens. You're not the only one having dreams, you know. That freezes you. Tell me, you whisper. She shakes her head. Not yet. She leaves. The moon rises full again that night. You order your chamber to be emptied. No priests, no dream tokens, no servants. Just you and the stars and the statue. You had it moved into your room, the very one from the Temple of Ptah. It sits by the window now, eyes wide, face streaked. You kneel before it. I hear you, you say. Silence, I see you. Silence. Then a gust of wind, not strong, but sharp enough to extinguish the oil lamp by your bed. And when the flame dies, you feel it again, the sense of falling. Not into sleep, into something else. You wake before dawn, but you're not sure you ever truly slept. The room is cold, the air oddly still. You lie there for a long moment, staring at the statue's face in the window's faint blue light. It hasn't moved, of course, but somehow it no longer feels like an object. It feels like an audience. A rustle at the door. Your most trusted servant enters, eyes down, carrying your mourning robe. You nod and he helps you rise without a word. You're more tired than usual. Your limbs ache not from age, but from something heavier. Like your spirit didn't return fully from wherever it went last night. Your morning routine begins again, but with new silence. The oils still smell like cardamom and myrrh. The coal still lines your eyes. The attendants still shave your scalp with obsidian razors. But the air feels thinner, more expectant. You whisper to the dream priest tonight, no statue, no tokens. Just let me sleep. He nods, but his expression betrays unease. He has also seen the shift. As Pharaoh, your divine role is absolute. But here's the truth: everyone knows when something is wrong. They just won't say it aloud. Yet. You summon the high priest of Amun. He arrives cloaked in leopard skins, a crown of ostrich feathers trembling slightly as he bows. You've noticed it, you say. He says nothing at first. Then softly, the gods are unsettled. What do they want? He hesitates. Not what my lord. Who? You lean forward. Speak plainly. They want someone returned. Or removed. You blink. Returned where his silence is your answer. Later in the grand court, you hold an open audience. Hundreds gather beneath the colonnades, courtiers, foreign envoys, scribes, military officers, priesthood delegates. Even the common folk crowd the outer courtyard, squinting in the sun just for a glimpse of you. You sit beneath a golden canopy flanked by statues of Horus and Thoth. A scribe reads aloud news from the Nile Delta, strange patterns in the floodwaters, some crops failing, early rumors of discolored fish. Nothing overtly dangerous, but that's what makes it worse. It's subtle. It's the kind of rot that begins from the roots and works upward, undetected until the tree topples. A priest speaks next. He recites a dream sent to the temple of Thoth, a jackal standing in a doorway whispering the name of a dead king. No one dares say whose. Historians still argue whether the ancient Egyptians truly believed their kings were cursed if the rites of succession weren't perfectly performed. But here's the inside truth: you believe it. Because you saw what happened to Akhenaten. You saw what happened to your father's shadow, and now perhaps your own is growing long. That night you dine with your children. It's meant to be a gesture of unity, a sign that all is well. You are surrounded by sons tall, solemn, eager, and daughters painted with gold dust and draped in linen, so fine it flutters like fog. You make small talk. One boy boasts of his archery. Another recites a hymn. One daughter shows you a scarab ring she carved herself. But your gaze keeps flicking to your third son, the quiet one, the one whose mother is your second wife, the one who never smiles unless he thinks no one is looking. You catch him doing exactly that. And in that moment, something old and cold moves in your chest. You've seen this smile before. On your uncle, on your cousin, on your brother just before the feast where he slipped poison into your cup. You never drank it. He never walked again. You excuse yourself early. In your private sanctuary, you sit before a mirror of polished silver. You study your own face, the lines, the eyes, the slight tremble in your left hand you keep hidden during ceremonies. You're aging, and the gods have noticed. You summon the royal embalmer. Yes, now. He arrives alarmed but obedient. You instruct him to begin drawing up the blueprints for your burial chamber's revisions. The angle of the tomb must be adjusted to avoid the red star, you say. It passed over the temple of Set last night. I saw it. The embalmer nods nervously, scribbling on a wax tablet. And make sure the canopic jars are sealed with obsidian, not alabaster. The white stone absorbs too much. He blinks. Yes, my lord. As he leaves, you feel the strangest sensation relief. Because in death, at least, you'll be alone. Or so you hope. You retreat to the roof of the palace where the stars sprawl over the night sky like a scattered army. The city of Thebes stretches below, quiet but pulsing. You whisper, "What do you want from me?" No reply, then a breeze. Just a breeze. But it carries a whisper. Truth you turn, no one's there. Just you, just Pharaoh. Just a man in a crown staring into eternity and wondering if the gods have stopped listening or just begun. You descend from the rooftop slowly, as though each step carries you further from the stars and deeper into something thick and heavy. The halls are empty at this hour. Torches flicker, casting shadows that stretch too long and curve where they shouldn't. You try not to look directly at them. You are Pharaoh, but even gods fear what walks in the margins. Back in your chamber, the statue of Ptah has been removed. You gave the order yourself. But the space where it stood still holds weight like something unseen, continues to squat there, watching, waiting. You pretend not to notice as you let the servants prepare you for rest. They speak softly, hands practiced and quick. Tonight they bring no dream tokens, no incantations. You are not expecting sleep. You are expecting revelation, but it doesn't come. What comes instead is a scroll. It arrives just as your head touches the stone pillow, delivered by a breathless courier who kneels so low he nearly collapses. You open it yourself, no guards, no vizier. The seal is unfamiliar, the writing foreign. It's a letter from a Mitanni princess, one you refused to marry 6 years ago. She writes not to accuse, but to warn. She says her temple priests have seen visions an empire burning a falcon with broken wings, and a name carved backward into stone your name. She urges you to consecrate your heir and lock the line of succession now, before others do it for you. You fold the scroll carefully. The next morning you summon your sons. All of them. 6 legitimate, 3 officially overlooked. You watch them enter one by one. Each walks with posture trained. Since childhood, their shoulders drawn back like bows. They bow to you in unison, and the silence that follows could bend iron. You look at them and see pieces of yourself, some you like, most you don't. One has your hands, another your cunning, one bears your temper, and one your ambition. You announce your decision. The second son will be crown prince. There is no protest, but the third son, the quiet one, nods slightly the way someone nods when they've already planned for the alternative. Afterward, you meet privately with your great royal wife. She says nothing, just pours herself a cup of pomegranate wine. You disagree, you say. I expected it, she replies. Do you think I chose wrongly? She sips, then shrugs. You chose for peace, not for strength. You don't answer, because she's not wrong. That evening, you walk the palace gardens alone. The heat lingers in the stone. Water trickles from a fountain shaped like Hathor's face. You pause beneath a tamarisk tree, old sacred, older than your father's tomb. And suddenly you hear it. Whispering, not voices, not language, just meaning. It slides through your bones like cool oil. A question. Do you trust your blood? You return to the throne room, even though no court is scheduled. You stand in the center of the chamber beneath the open skylight where stars peer down like gods who've forgotten how to blink. You summon your chief scribe. You dictate a law. It's a secret law, one that won't be recorded publicly unless activated. If you die under unnatural circumstances, poison dagger dream that all your sons are disinherited, and the throne passes to your daughter, the one who cheats at sonnet and never stops asking questions. The scribe's hand trembles as he writes. When finished, he says, "Shall I seal it?" Not yet, you whisper. Burn it. He looks at you startled. Burn it, but memorize it. The scribe bows and does as told. He is a loyal man. For now. The next day, your youngest daughter brings you a gift. It's a small clay sculpture of a crocodile glazed in turquoise. She says it's Sobek to protect you from bad dreams. You place it on your writing desk beside your seal. That night, the dreams return. But this time, you're not alone in them. Your sons are there standing around your sarcophagus. Each places a stone on the lid, one by one, until it is sealed. But your daughter, she removes one and whispers through the crack, "Not yet." You wake with a gasp. You're drenched in sweat, limbs stiff, mouth dry. The scarab token has reappeared somehow beside your head. You stare at it. It stares back. Outside, the birds begin their morning song. Inside, you begin to wonder, is this how all pharaohs go mad? Not from poison or plots, but from prophecy. By now, the lines in your face feel deeper. You're not sure if it's age or the weight of sleeplessness, perhaps both. The palace buzzes like a wasp's nest with rumors, though no one says anything directly to you. They bow, they smile, they perform their rituals, but you can feel it. That hum beneath the surface, the quiet ripple of anticipation. This morning begins not with hymns, but with silence. Even the servants seem hesitant, moving like ghosts. You don your ceremonial linen and turquoise collar. Today is a festival day, but your hands shake as you fasten the golden sash. A subtle tremor, just enough to feel real. You ask to see your physician, not the public one who assures the court you're the picture of divinity, the private one, the old one, the one who knows what sacred silence truly means. He checks your pulse, your tongue, your eyes. He does not speak for a long time. Well, you ask. You're dying, he says plainly. Of what? Of being Pharaoh? You almost laugh. Almost. He shrugs. Your blood is too thin. Your bones are tired. Your lungs rasp like papyrus rubbed raw. And how long he doesn't answer. Just bows and withdraws. You sit alone for a while, staring at the floor mosaic beneath your feet. Horus standing atop the coiled serpent. Apep, god of chaos. A reminder that your role is to subdue darkness, not surrender to it. You smile bitterly, because the serpent under your heel now looks a lot like your own bloodline. You think of your ancestors. Ramses the Great, who chiseled his name into temples so large they swallowed the sky. Akhenaten, who tried to rewrite the gods. Cleopatra, who wagered her crown on love and lost it to Rome. And now you. What will they remember? A pharaoh who saw his end coming in dreams did nothing? Or a king who danced with death and smiled? It's time to consider the bloodline. Not just the heirs you've named, but how you made them. Historians often avoid this part or gloss it over politely. But the reality is most pharaohs practiced royal incest. Not out of lust, but out of obligation. To keep the divine bloodline pure. Brother marries sister. Father fathers children with daughters of previous wives. Cousins become queens. And so the line coils tighter like a rope made of reeds until it strangles itself. You've seen it. Your brother, may he rest, was born with 6 fingers on each hand. Your own father had an extra molar that grew sideways through his cheek. Your joints ache like you're 70, but you're only in your 40s. Maybe. And your second son. He walks with a limp that no healer can fix. The physicians don't call it a curse, but they don't call it divine either. You once asked the high priest if the gods ever punished kings through their children. He said they punish the world through kings. You didn't ask again. That afternoon, your daughter, the daughter, visits again. She brings you a painted fan decorated with cranes flying in circles. She says they represent eternity. You ask her if she wants to rule one day. She shakes her head. No, I want to build. Build what she thinks. A city with no temples. Just gardens. You nod. You wonder if the gods would allow such a place to exist. Later during court, a foreign envoy from the Hittites arrives, bearing gifts: a golden dagger, a white peacock feather, and a scroll declaring everlasting peace. You nod politely. You accept the feather, but your mind drifts. That night during the feast, the wine flows too freely. Harpists play their songs. Dancers spin in linen veils. You laugh when you're supposed to. You clap at the appropriate moments. But the entire time you watch your sons. The second son, your chosen heir, sits straight and quiet, his hands folded like a statue. The third son avoids your gaze. The fourth whispers to a foreign princess. The fifth keeps glancing at your cup. You don't drink it. When the feast ends, you retire early. You visit the royal archives again, this time alone. You light a single oil lamp and pull out the scrolls documenting previous lines of succession. You scan the names. So many brothers killed. So many nephews exiled. So many sons forgotten. And yet the kingdom endured, because the throne was never about blood. It was about belief. You write a secret decree, one no one will see unless the tomb doors are sealed. You name your daughter as she who may rise a title with no precedent, but enough ambiguity to hold weight if someone dares to wield it. You roll the scroll, place it in a jar, seal it with wax. Then you walk outside. The moon is full again. The stars watch. And you whisper, "I break the circle." Let it spiral outward. Just for once, the night does not whisper back. And that is the most unnerving thing of all. You rise with the dawn again, though it no longer feels like waking. It feels like resuming something already in progress. Like you were never fully gone, just dimmed, waiting to be relit. Today is different. You can sense it in the stillness of the air, the way your sandals don't echo down the hallway, the way the guards glance at you and then quickly away. Today, your dead come calling. It starts with a scroll. It always does. This one bears the seal of the Temple of Osiris. Black wax. The kind reserved for funerary rites. You open it slowly and read, "A forgotten tomb has opened." It belongs to someone who should have never been buried. You exhale long, low, like you're trying to empty more than your lungs. You summon your vizier, your high priest, and your most trusted builder. We ride for the valley, you tell them. They protest too far, too hot, too dangerous, too soon after last week's eclipse. You cut them off with a stare. An hour later, you ride out. Not in gold-draped palanquins or beside singing fanfare. Just you, a handful of guards, and the sun burning the horizon like a kiln's mouth. The Valley of the Kings always hums with stillness, but today it buzzes. Something in the air makes your teeth ache. The tomb is small, narrow, hidden behind a rockfall that shouldn't have shifted but did. Inside, the scent is wrong. It doesn't smell like dust or decay. It smells like life, humid, electric, ancient. You descend. Torchlight flickers against walls painted with forgotten gods' names, scratched out glyphs twisted. Someone buried here wasn't just erased, they were unwritten. And yet the sarcophagus is intact. You approach slowly. You read the faint inscription, Akhenaten, he who walked against the sun. You feel the weight of generations press against your chest. Historians still argue whether Akhenaten was a madman visionary or the first monotheist. You already know the answer. He was a mirror. Too bright to look at, too dangerous to turn away from. You run your fingers along the lid. The stone is cold, but the air around it vibrates. You step back. You give the order. Seal it again. No prayers, no chants, just stone upon stone. You do not want him awake. Not now. Not ever. Back at the palace, silence greets you again. Except it isn't silent, because now the dreams begin before you sleep. You see visions even while your eyes are open. Statues moving just out of sight. Mirrors reflecting rooms that no longer exist. You begin keeping incense burning constantly, not because of smell, but to track movement. If the smoke bends without wind, you know something is near. One night you find a scarab in your bed. A real one. Still twitching. Its shell glossy and black like wet ink. You don't kill it. You let it crawl across your chest. It leaves a red line like a signature and disappears beneath the sheets. You don't look for it. The next morning your daughter visits again. She's brought scrolls her own writings. Poetry, you read them. They are about balance, order, a king who dares to die. You say nothing, but when she leaves, you place them beside your death mask. That afternoon, you call for the royal stonemason. You ask him to begin carving your tomb inscription. What should it say, he asks. You think? Then answer, he ruled. He saw. He unknotted the rope, he frowns. Is it a riddle, he asks. Not yet, you reply. That night you eat alone. No music, no wine, just bread, salt, and water. You're preparing, not for death, but for the moment between, the breath before judgment, the second before your heart is weighed against a feather. You place a single item at your bedside, the clay crocodile your daughter gave you. Let Sobek guard you now, because tomorrow you begin the final rite. And the gods will not be pleased. The day begins without ceremony. That in itself is a ceremony. You've told no one what you plan to do. Not the priests, not your wife, not even the scribes who track your every glance like it's divine gospel. You've stepped outside the circle now, outside the roles, the mask, the protocol, and it feels strange like wearing someone else's skin. You rise before the sun. Dress yourself in plain linen. No gold, no coal, no falcon-crowned headdress. Just a man preparing to ask the gods a question they never wanted to hear. What comes after belief? You walk alone to the house of Mayat, the inner temple reserved only for judgment rites. It's usually entered only in death when your heart is placed on the scales beside the feather. But today you go in living. The guards try to stop you. You don't speak, you don't order, you simply look at them, and they step aside. Inside the temple is utterly still. The columns rise like giants. The carvings stare down with blank eyes. You walk barefoot across cool alabaster tiles toward the statue of Ma'ot herself. She sits eternal wings, outstretched gaze unblinking, and on the altar before her the ceremonial feather. You kneel, and you speak aloud. I do not ask for mercy. I ask for clarity. The feather doesn't move. The air doesn't shift. But something answers. Not in words, not in visions, in weight. You feel your chest grow heavy, your limbs sink, your breath shortens. A pressure not pain but understanding. You are not the center. You are not owed anything. But you are responsible for everything. It's terrifying and freeing. You leave the feather untouched. You bow, then rise. When you step outside, the sun crests the horizon, and for a moment it aligns perfectly with the temple gate, casting your shadow directly toward the Nile. A priest sees this and gasps. An omen, he whispers. You don't correct him. Let them think what they need. Later that morning, your vizier begs for an audience. He's been hearing rumors, whispers, that you intend to name your daughter as co-ruler, that you've written a shadow law that the gods no longer bless your name in the morning hymns. You let him speak. Then you ask, do you believe I'm Pharaoh because the gods chose me or because you did? He stutters. I believe in balance, he finally says. Then maintain it, you reply. You dismiss him with a nod. You are no longer playing by the old rules, and everyone can feel it. But no one knows what comes next, including you. That evening you host a dinner, a private one, only family, only the heirs, only your daughter sits beside you. The others line the table, each glancing at one another like they're playing sonnet with knives instead of tiles. You raise a cup. You say a few words. You talk about legacy, about the weight of the crown, about the breath of gods and the limits of men. Then you ask each child a question. What do you fear? One says war. Another says failure. One says betrayal. Your daughter says silence. The others laugh nervously. You don't. That night, you leave the palace. No guards, no fanfare. Just a hood, a staff, and the scent of the river guiding you forward. You walk to the edge of Thebes where the common folk live, where no murals depict your face, where bread is real, not symbolic. You sit among them in a crowded alleyway, share lentil stew from a clay pot, and listen to their fears, to their prayers, to their jokes. No one recognizes you. That's the real miracle. One old woman presses a coin into your palm and says, "For luck, traveler, it's more than anyone's offered you in weeks." You return long after midnight. In your chamber, you look at the clay crocodile. Its painted smile seems wider. You pick it up and speak aloud. "I've stepped outside the circle, then softly, and I don't want to go back." The wind rustles the curtains. You lie down. This time when sleep comes, it does not claw or whisper. It simply is. And in that sleep, no dreams visit you. Just a blank sky. Just the Nile flowing. Just your breath steady and mortal. You awaken to the sound of flutes, but not court flutes, the ones used in funeral rites. Slow, breathy, mournful. You sit up instantly. It's still dark. The moon hasn't set, but the palace is awake. You hear sandaled footsteps moving quickly down marble halls. You smell incense thick as fog. Something has happened. You wrap yourself in your robe, and as you step out into the corridor, your bodyguards bow low, not looking at you. One whispers, "The oracle has spoken." You raise a brow. Which oracle? The blind girl from Siwa. She's here. Your stomach drops. You didn't summon her. She walks into your throne room at sunrise barefoot and veiled, her eyes clouded with that pale blue film that marks those who see more than they should. She's no older than 12. She kneels before you. Then she laughs. Not disrespectfully, not loudly, but as though she's just been told a joke by a god, and she knows better than to explain it. You ask her, "What have you seen?" She replies with 3 words. "You are too." The court erupts in confused murmurs. You wave them to silence. She continues. "There is the king who rules and the one who watches. One will die, the other will remain." You ask which one dies. She smiles faintly. "That depends on who you feed." Later that morning, you stare into your mirror, trying to find the second man inside your own face. You see only tired eyes and the faint tremble in your hands. You remember the statue of Ma'at, the pressure, the understanding. 2 men, one public, one private, one eternal, one terrified. That afternoon, you meet with your general. He reports movement in Nubia. Bandits, most likely. He suggests sending scouts. You tell him let them roam, for now. He doesn't understand, but he nods. You don't explain, because right now your concern isn't borders, it's thresholds. You visit your tomb in progress. It's nearly finished. Carved deep into the Theban cliffs, its walls are covered in scenes of your life. Battles won, tributes received, gods embraced. And then toward the back, a small, unfinished alcove. "This is new," you say to the architect. He hesitates. "Your daughter asked for it, said it should be left blank." For what she said, in case he chooses silence. You place a hand against the smooth, untouched stone. It's colder than the rest. That night, you return to your room. Your daughter's waiting for you. She sits cross-legged on the floor, painting something by oil lamp. It's a small wooden disc. She shows it to you. On one side, the sun. On the other, a cracked crown. "It spins," she says. "Whichever side lands up when you die, that's the story they'll tell." You nod slowly. Then ask, "And what if it lands on its edge?" She smiles. Then maybe you were more than a story. You tell her to keep it. Before she leaves, she asks, "Will you let me speak at your burial?" You hesitate. "Yes." She nods once and goes. You sleep poorly? You dream not of death, but of the desert, an endless horizon. You walk it barefoot, robes torn by wind, mouth dry. Behind you walks a shadow in your shape. Every time you stop, it does too. You turn. It turns. You run. It follows. Then a voice feed me. You wake, gasping, heart hammering. You know now what the oracle meant. You are too. And you must choose which one starves. The next day, you refuse the crown. Literally, you do not wear it. The priests protest, the council whispers, the people notice. But you do not explain. You walk through the palace bareheaded, looking not like a king, but like a man remembering he was one. The day continues as usual, edicts signed, petitions reviewed, offerings accepted. But you notice something new. When you look in the mirror, you see no one behind your eyes. You don't sleep the next night. Not because of fear, because of preparation. You spend the hours before dawn sorting through scrolls, royal correspondences, foreign treaties, temple accounts, records of oaths you never meant to keep. They form a mountain around you, each one a tether, tying you to this world, to this identity. You take a lamp and burn the ones that feel false. By sunrise, the room is thick with smoke and truth. Your bodyguards find you in this haze. Eyes red, robes singed, the golden crook and flail symbols of your divine authority lie abandoned on the floor, half melted from the lamp's heat. You don't pick them up. Today you tell them we unmake the throne. They think it's metaphor. You do not correct them. In the Hall of Pillars, the priests await. They have arranged a purification rite, a public spectacle to show the people that the gods still favor you. You're to be anointed with lotus oil wrapped in white linen and proclaimed as Ra's living breath. You walk into the ceremony barefoot. The high priest begins his chant, voice echoing against the sandstone. He pours the oil, he binds the cloth, he raises the sacred knife to make the ritual cut across your palm. You stop him. "I am already bleeding," you say. You raise your hand. It's not cut. But the trembling is visible. You unwrap the linen, drop it to the floor. The crowd gasps. "Pharaoh," someone whispers, scandalized. "I am no longer Pharaoh," you say. Calmly, quietly, as if shedding a name is no more difficult than shedding sandals. The priest hesitates. "You cannot say that." "Then you say it," you reply. No one does. The ceremony ends with no conclusion. You walk out before the final chant. The guards follow, the crowd parts, and the city murmurs behind your back, like a river unsure whether to flood or recede. Later, in your private garden, you sit by the fish pond. The lilies bloom despite everything. Dragonflies dance in lazy spirals. Your daughter joins you, carrying 2 cups of cold water with sprigs of mint. She hands you one. Neither of you speaks. She watches the water. You watch her. After a long time, she asks, "Do you want to live forever?" You think, then answer, "Only if I can choose how." She nods like she already knew, then says, "You have 3 days." You blink. 3 days for what? For the name to die. You almost laugh. What name? She looks at you. The one they chant, not the one you hear in dreams. You understand her perfectly. That evening you write letters. To the foreign kings, to the temple overseers, to your children, each one in your own hand. You seal them with wax. No emblem. Just your fingerprint. Then you begin dismantling the royal chamber. Piece by piece. The gold-etched bed donated to the Temple of Bastet. The ceremonial fan given to a nursemaid in the nursery. The obsidian mirror buried beneath a fig tree. All that remains by nightfall is a single low mat, a lamp, and the crocodile figurine. You lie down staring at the ceiling where stars have been painted in lapis and gold. You wonder, did any pharaoh before you ever see past the ceiling? Or did they all die staring up thinking they ruled the heavens? At midnight a servant enters trembling. He kneels. My lord, the council is meeting. Without you. You nod. Let them. He hesitates. They say, you are unwell. You smile. They're wrong. I'm awake. When he leaves you, close your eyes. You expect dreams. Instead, you hear footsteps. Not outside. Inside. The kind that echo not in your ears, but in your bones. Then a voice not spoken, but understood 3 days. You don't reply, because you already did. The moment you let go of the crown. The first of the 3 days begins with nothing. No summons, no rituals, no frantic ministers banging on the doors. The palace somehow obeys your silence. You step out into the courtyard barefoot. The ground is still warm from the night before, and for once the world does not greet you with titles. No living Horus, no son of the sun, just the wind brushing your linen. You walk alone to the temple of Set. It's an unusual choice. Set, god of storms and chaos, is not the typical companion for a pharaoh seeking peace. But you're not seeking peace. You're seeking truth. The temple is rarely used these days. The priests keep it clean, but mostly out of obligation. Set has been tamed and the myths domesticated into a necessary evil. But you know better. He's the god who murdered Osiris and still got a seat at the table. You step inside and feel it immediately, the electric hush. The kind of silence that waits for a decision. You walk the colonnade to the altar and stand before his statue. Redstone tall ears, face like a dog or a jackal or a thing that has no real name. You speak. You were never about destruction. The air shifts. You were about change. No thunder, no voice. Just a faint creaking as if the temple itself adjusted its spine. You sit on the cold stone floor. You begin to pray, but not to Set, to yourself. Or rather to the second version of yourself, the one the oracle saw, the one who watches, the one who until now you fed in secret. You say aloud, come forward, and it does. Not as a spirit, not as a voice, but as a memory. You see yourself at 13, standing in your father's court clutching a scroll you could barely read, afraid to speak, because you didn't know how to breathe in the presence of divinity. You see the day you killed your first rebel. You see the face of the servant you had executed for misplacing a statue. You see every moment you swallowed doubt to maintain control. They gather like smoke in the temple, pooling around your feet. And in the middle of it, you feel the second self sharper, quieter, thinner, like a reed just before it's carved into a flute. You don't try to merge, you just sit beside it. You return to the palace that afternoon lighter, not because something was removed, but because you stopped pretending it wasn't there. The guards ask if you need anything. You say yes. Paint? They blink. You repeat paint. Brushes. Pigments. Clay. That evening, you begin decorating the blank alcove in your tomb. You do it yourself. No artisans, no apprentices. Just your own hand dipped in ochre blue and black. You don't paint battles, you paint breath. Waves. Wind. A falcon flying low over a reed marsh. A crocodile napping in the sun. A child laughing at a falling date. Things you remember, or things you wanted to remember. And finally, in the center, a man, standing alone in empty desert arms raised not in worship, but in surrender. A gesture that says, I am here. That is enough. You don't sleep that night, not out of fear, out of completion. You sit by the tomb wall until dawn hands stained eyes dry, heart beating like a steady drum in a quiet procession. As the second day begins, you eat breakfast with your daughter. No plates, just figs and warm bread wrapped in linen. She doesn't ask what you painted. You don't tell her. She hands you a box. Inside is the spinning disc she carved, polished smooth now. On one side, the sun. On the other, the cracked crown. You flip it between your fingers. It lands on its edge. She says nothing. You say nothing. Because that is the answer. Later, alone again, you sit with the scroll of your own reign, the one your scribes have been drafting for decades. It's thick with triumphs. It sings of battles, tributes, alliances. You tear out the last 10 pages. You write your own final line. He walked away and left the door open. You sign it, seal it, place it beside the clay crocodile. As you lie down again, this time not to sleep, but simply to rest, you whisper one more day. And the wind outside says back, make it count. The third day begins with a tremor. Not in the ground, but in the people. You sense it in the way the courtiers mill about without direction, like a hive without its queen. You see it in the eyes of your generals, the shifting gazes, the subtle questions dancing on their brows. Is he still Pharaoh? Is there even a Pharaoh anymore? You walk through the palace with no guards, no robe, just a staff in one hand and a scroll case in the other. You arrive at the Hall of Two Truths. Normally, this hall is used only during coronations and funerals. Today, it will serve both. The council is already assembled, fidgeting in their ceremonial collars and fan-feathered wigs. They murmur as you enter, standing out like a shadow at a wedding. You climb the dais. You do not sit. Instead, you speak. I have come to close the loop. The chamber stills. You open the scroll case. I wrote this myself. It is not an edict. It is not a prophecy. It is simply a memory. And when I finish reading it, I will walk out of this room, and someone else will decide what comes next. They do not interrupt, not once. You read aloud a story, not of war, not of glory, but of your first morning as Pharaoh. The way your crown pinches your scalp. The way the temple smelled of old oil. The way your voice cracked during the first invocation and everyone pretended not to notice. You tell them how afraid you were, how that fear never left. It only changed shape. You read until your voice begins to waver. You finish with, I held the sun in my hand and it burned through me. Now I offer what remains. You set down the scroll and you leave the hall. Not escorted, not arrested, just gone. You walk the palace corridors, slowly memorizing every mosaic, every torch holder, every breeze that sneaks through cracked stone. In your chamber, you find everything as you left it. The mat, the lamp, the crocodile. You sit down, you eat a single date, you drink a cup of river water, unfiltered warm, and then you call for your daughter. She enters quietly, carrying nothing but her breath. You hand her the clay crocodile. He's yours now, you say. She nods. I know. She sits beside you on the floor. You talk. Not of kingdoms or names, just of birds. How the ibis returns each year, how the owls in the courtyard only call when the moon is full. How once you thought you saw a phoenix. It was probably just a hawk, but you liked believing it wasn't. She tells you she found a lotus blooming through a crack in the outer wall. You tell her that's where the first temple should be built. Neither of you says goodbye. Neither of you says I love you. But it's in the way you speak, in the way you listen, in the way she doesn't cry. That evening alone you walk once more to your unfinished tomb. You light the lamps. You kneel before the mural you painted with your own hands. And for the first time since you were crowned, you pray without asking for anything. Just presence, just silence, just truth. You lie down beside the wall, cheek against the cool stone. You breathe slowly, you close your eyes, and this time when sleep comes, it carries no names, no titles, no burdens. Just the river, just the stars, just the sound of distant drums as the gods gather not to judge but to watch. Because even they don't know what comes next. The days that follow blur together, but not for you. For them. The court wakes to absence. Your robes hang untouched in their cedar-lined cases. The throne remains unsat. The council chambers echo with the voices of men who suddenly realize there is no script. No God voice to nod approval. No divine finger pointing the way forward. You are gone, but not dead. That's the part that truly unsettles them. Because a pharaoh is supposed to die into divinity, not walk away from it. The official scribes debate whether to record your departure. One suggests writing that you were taken by the gods in a beam of light. Another proposes poison quick dramatic, easily blamed on foreign influence. But none of those stories fit, because the people have already started telling their own. Down by the Nile, fishmongers whisper that you live among them disguised in rags. Children claim to have seen you praying under the tamarisk trees. A sand seller swears he heard you singing to the crocodiles at dusk. The myth is growing faster than the truth. Your daughter, now seated behind the royal scrolls, quiet but unflinching, makes no attempt to correct them. Instead, she issues one proclamation: order will continue. But divinity is postponed. No one knows what it means. But they obey it anyway. The temples grumble, of course. The priests fret that without a pharaoh's rituals, the sun might not rise properly, the rains might forget to fall. The afterlife might shut its gates. But when morning comes and the sun still rises, the people begin to wonder, were we ever the ones feeding the gods, or were they feeding off us? Historians still argue whether this moment marks the decline of Egypt's sacred monarchy or the birth of a new decentralized spirituality. Some say your daughter seized power through manipulation. Others claim you were ill-delusional, perhaps even cursed. None of them can explain the absence you left. Because it wasn't just the crown you dropped, it was the belief that the crown meant more than the person. Your daughter begins small reforms. She allows farmers to name their children whatever they please, no more enforced homage to Horus or Ra. She commissions public baths open to all, not just nobility. She orders that 1 day a week no work shall be done, no scrolls copied, no taxes collected. A day of breath. Some nobles resist. Others vanish mysteriously. But the people begin to call her not queen, not pharaoh, but simply the listener. Meanwhile, you are not idle. You walk the roads between Thebes and Memphis. You carry no seal. You wear no jewelry. You are just an old man with sand in his sandals and ink on his fingers. Sometimes you barter advice for a bowl of lentils. Sometimes you spend entire days watching the reeds sway beside the canals. And sometimes when the moon is high and the stars are sharp enough to cut thought, you take out a piece of charcoal and draw on clay on bark in the dust itself. Always the same figure, a man standing still, arms raised to nothing. You never sign it. But the people begin calling it the still one. It spreads. Children carve it on pots. Shepherds etch it on cave walls. Even priests in secret whisper prayers to the motionless God, who does not demand only witnesses. You never intended this, but you also never stop it. On the anniversary of your disappearance, your daughter sends a procession into the desert not to find you, but to honor the distance. They leave offerings not at a temple, but at crossroads. She herself stays behind planting fig trees near the old walls of your tomb, not to entomb your memory, but to shade it. You far away sit beneath a crumbling aqueduct, sipping water from a leather pouch. A child runs past you, laughing, wearing a necklace with a tiny clay crocodile. You smile. You don't ask where she got it. You already know. And in that moment, you realize something strange. You are happier now than you ever were on the throne, because now your breath is your own, and every step is no longer part of a ceremony. It's simply a walk toward whatever the horizon chooses to offer. You are walking again, this time not toward anything, just walking. Through fields sown with barley, along footpaths worn by centuries of calloused feet, through market towns where no one knows your name and no one bows. You pause sometimes to trade stories for food. You learn the names of river fishermen, weavers, a man who dyes linen with crushed indigo, and a girl who believes cats carry fragments of the moon in their eyes. You say little, but you listen. And everywhere you go, they ask the same question, though they don't say it out loud. Why did he leave? They don't ask you directly, of course. To them, you're just another wandering scribe or a half-mad ex-priest with a sunburnt scalp and a talent for carving reed flutes. You let the legends bloom without interference. Some say you were cursed after looking upon a forbidden scroll. Others claim you walked into the tomb of an old god and never came back the same. One boy insists he saw you talking to a hawk in a perfect hieroglyphs. You don't correct him, because in a way they're all true. In the distance, the capital stirs. Your daughter's reforms are rippling now, slowly, carefully. She's abolished the death tax, the tradition where families must donate livestock to secure their loved one's passage into the afterlife. If the gods require cattle to accept your grandmother, she reportedly said they may not be worth following. It stirs the priesthood like a beehive, but the people love her for it. She has also stopped the practice of naming pyramids after rulers. Instead, the monuments are being renamed after ideas. Hope balance the long breath. Historians still argue whether this marks the beginning of philosophical Egypt, a term used to describe the brief but strange era where spirituality turned inward and personal virtue mattered more than bloodline or divine descent. And behind it all, your absence looms. Not like a wound, but like a riddle. One old priest writes the Pharaoh died, but not in flesh. He died in the sacred script, and thus he became unkillable. Meanwhile, you've begun carving again. Not in stone, your hands have grown too stiff, but in wood, clay, and even the trunks of trees. Always the same figure, the man standing still. Now he begins to carry things, a staff, a scroll, a flame cupped gently in both hands. Once you carve him kneeling, not in supplication, but in gratitude. A farmer sees your carving and asks, "Is that a god?" You shrug, "Could be." He looks sad or wise. The farmer pauses. Maybe that's the same thing. You smile. Sometimes you wonder what your old advisors would say if they saw you now. Hair uncombed. Sandals, worn thin robes patched with thread that doesn't even match. You look like a ghost of yourself, but you've never felt more solid. And in your sleep, when sleep comes, you no longer dream of judgment, of scales and feathers of Anubis waiting with blank eyes. Now you dream of breath, deep, slow, warm. You walk through these dreams like you walk the roads, barefoot, curious, content to not reach an ending. Until one night you dream of your daughter, not as she is now, but as a child again sitting in your lap, her tiny fingers tracing the gold thread on your robe. She says, I made something. You look down. In her hands is the spinning disc. You reach out. She places it in your palm. And then she says, spin it. But this time, don't look. You wake before you know how it lands. The next morning, you do something different. You return. Not to the throne. Not to the palace, to the tomb. Your own. The one carved years ago into the cliff face, half claimed by vines and roots, wind-worn and quiet. You bring no offerings, just yourself. And a reed brush. Inside, the mural you painted still remains faded, now cracked in places, but untouched. You sit beneath it. You don't pray. You don't speak. You simply begin to brush the dust away, not to restore it, just to remember it. You're not here to claim it. You're here to witness it, because once this place was meant to hold your eternity, now it only holds a moment. And somehow, that is enough. You remain at the tomb for 3 nights. No guards, no visitors, just the company of stillness and the occasional lizard sunning itself on the threshold. You sleep curled in the cool dust of your own past. You eat dates and drink from a chipped water jar once meant for a burial offering. You keep the door open during the day, and at night you light a small lamp and let its glow warm the face of the painted man on the wall. Each morning you sweep. Not out of ritual, just to keep the place breathing. On the 4th morning you hear footsteps crunching on gravel. Your first instinct is to vanish into the shadows. Old habits. But then she appears. Your daughter. No entourage, no fanfare. Just her in travel robes, sandals, dusty face shaded by a palm-woven hat. She doesn't bow. You don't rise. She sits beside you. Together you stare at the mural. The figure with arms raised, the falcon gliding above, the empty sky. She says, I change the laws about inheritance. You nod. I let the scribes teach commoners now, even girls. You glance at her. She adds, they were annoyed, but not as much as I expected. You smile faintly. That's because they were already tired. She laughs short and dry. Of everything. A pause. Then softly she says, do you regret it? You take a while to answer. No, but I mourn it. Mourn what? The illusion. The beauty of being believed. She looks at you then at the mural again. They still believe. Just differently. You hand her a small scrap of papyrus. On it, a new drawing, the same still figure, but now he's planting a tree. She studies it, then says, they'll copy this too. You shrug. That's not why I drew it, I know, she replies. But it will happen anyway. You sit in silence for a long while. Cicadas sing from the cliffs. A warm wind nudges the palm fronds overhead. Somewhere far below the Nile flows as it always has. Finally, she speaks again. I came to ask you something. You wait. She doesn't hesitate. Will you come back? You don't ask where to the throne, the palace. The story, because you already know the answer. I can't, you say, but I'll walk beside it. She nods. There's no sadness in her expression, just understanding. You offer her the brush. She kneels and begins to repaint a faded patch of sky on the mural. You correct her stroke once gently. She learns fast. That evening you walk her to the river. She boards a skiff rowed by 2 women in pale linen. Before she steps in, she turns and says, I left a place for you. Not in a palace, in the temple garden, for what you ask. She grins. A bench, a fig tree, and a silence. You watch the skiff drift away. The river swallows the boat without ripple. You return to the tomb and lie beneath the mural again. This time, your back does not ache. That night, you dream of the tree. A real one tall and wide branches hanging low with ripening fruit. Beneath it sits the still figure. But now he's old. Your age. He doesn't look at you. He just reaches out a hand and offers you a fig. You take it. You eat it. You wake up smiling. The next morning you leave the tomb again, this time not as a ghost, not as a king, not even as a man who walked away. You leave simply as one who listened, and just before you crest the final hill, you turn back once look at your tomb. You whisper, "I never needed it," and then you walk on. The path forward isn't marked on any scroll. There's no map for a life after kingship, just sand sky and choices that no longer echo down marble halls. And yet you move with certainty. Not because you know where you're going, but because you no longer care where, only how. You head north toward the delta. The air thickens with humidity and the Nile grows wider. More boats pass, more people, and yet anonymity holds. You are a stranger with kind eyes, a man who listens well and eats little. A few children call you Old Reed. One offers you a necklace of blue glass beads in exchange for a story. You tell him about the crocodile who dreamed of flying. You make people laugh now. That's new. In a town called Perbast, you rest beneath a tamarisk tree for 3 days. The townspeople feed you goat cheese and cucumbers. An old mason invites you to carve the lintel of a new granary with him. You don't tell him who you are, but he watches the way you trace the stone with your fingers and says, "You've shaped the world before." You nod. A little too tightly. He chuckles. "Try gently this time." So you do. Together you carve a sun over 2 open palms, not demanding, not ruling, just offering. By now, word has spread. Not of your name, but your presence. Rumors swirl that the old man with the ink-stained fingers once commanded armies, walked with gods and disappeared at the height of his power. Others say you're a prophet, or cursed, or blessed, a man with 2 hearts, a man who touched the duat and walked back out. Historians still argue whether this era marks a cultural revolution or just a social drift, whether your absence caused the shift in thought or merely coincided with it. They write papers with titles like The Hollow Throne and When the Divine Grew Quiet. But back here where the dust coats your ankles and children call you Reed Man, none of that matters. You keep moving. You take up small trades, mending baskets, reading dreams, drawing on broken pottery. Each night you make camp beneath the stars. Some nights villagers join you bringing fruit or gossip. One night a blind harpist sings of a forgotten Pharaoh who built a bridge from the heavens to the Nile. You listen quietly, smiling at the mistakes. Eventually your legs grow slower, your joints ache, but your spirit lighter than ever. One morning while walking along the water's edge, you spot something half buried in the sand, a child's toy, a small wooden crocodile. Hand-painted tail chipped, one eye missing. You pick it up. It's not the same one you left with your daughter, but it is, because the symbol no longer belongs to you. It never did. You sit beneath a sycamore tree and place the crocodile beside you. You begin carving again, this time not a figure, not a god, not even yourself. You carve a circle, unbroken. No center, no throne, just wholeness. You give it to a passing traveler who asks you what it means. You say, "It means I'm finished," but you aren't. Because later that evening you hear a familiar voice at a roadside inn. You step inside, and there she is, your daughter, older now, wiser in the eyes, sharper in the tone. She's wearing simple linen, speaking with farmers about irrigation and land tax reforms. She sees you. She smiles but doesn't make a scene. Just gestures to the seat beside her. You sit. No need for words. After the meeting, she walks you to the back courtyard. She tells you she's planning to step down not because she must, but because the time feels right. Power, she says, is a good knife. Sharp, useful, dangerous if gripped too tightly. You nod. She pulls out the old spinning disc, the sun on one side, the cracked crown on the other. I still don't know how it lands. Maybe you were never meant to. You sit in silence, breathing in the scent of wild mint growing near the wall, and for the first time in years, she leans her head on your shoulder. You stay that way until the stars rise. Not Pharaoh, not listener, just a father and daughter in the dusk listening to the wind and knowing that neither one of you needs to rule to shape the world. You only need to walk through it, open-eyed, open-handed. The rains come early that year. Not floods, just steady silver rains that turn dust to earth and fields to green. You walk less during these weeks, but think more. Days stretch longer as time grows quiet around you. You find shelter in a disused grain silo swept clean by the last harvest. Someone has left a clay jar of olives there. You take one and leave behind a carving of a fig branch, your quiet signature. You begin writing again. Not decrees. Stories. Simple ones scrawled on broken shards of pottery, a boy who teaches a lion to whisper, a girl who dances with thunder, a god who gives up omnipotence to become a reed flute in a beggar's hands. You leave them behind at inns, at wells, under rocks. You never sign them. But your symbol, the unbroken circle, begins appearing beside them, scratched in door frames, painted on sails, drawn in ash beside hearths. The stories travel faster than you do now. One day you find a young couple arguing about one. She thinks the lion represents Egypt. He says it's just a bedtime fable. They turn to you, the quiet man sipping lentil soup nearby. What do you think the lion means? You wipe your mouth and say, maybe it means you need to listen to each other. They blink, then laugh. They don't recognize you, and that's the greatest gift of all. You head south again as the river recedes. The sun returns stronger, but it doesn't sting like before. Your skin has grown used to truth. You stop in a village where a celebration is underway. Children leap through hoops, elders chant old poems, and a mural is being painted on the temple wall. You stop cold. The figure, arms raised still, is there. But this time he is surrounded by others. Children, dancers, potters, bakers, scribes. Not followers, companions. The painter, a young woman with cobalt under her nails, catches you watching. Do you like it? You nod. It's different. Good different or bad different? Real different. She smiles. That's what we hoped. You stay the night and sleep under the stars on the temple roof. No one disturbs you. No one whispers. In the morning, they invite you to bless the mural. You laugh and say, I'm not holy, but they insist that's why you're allowed. You lay your hand gently on the wall. The paint is cool, still damp. You leave no mark. Later, sitting beside the Nile, you remember your coronation, the heavy gold, the chants, the fear. And now, this a barefoot in the mud, a sun-warmed fig in your hand, a child running by shouting, Tag, you're old! You smile and shout back, wiser, not slower. The child returns grinning and tags you anyway. You let him win. That evening you write one final scroll. No edicts, just a reflection. I was many men, boy, prince, king, questioner, echo, breath. I wore gold and called it skin. I sat on thrones and forgot how to sit on earth. Now I sit. And I remember, this too is power. You roll it up, place it inside a clay jar, and bury it beneath a fig tree. Not because you want it found, but because things grow better when given a root. And that's what you are now. Not a monument, not a myth, a root. Somewhere far away, your daughter sings with the priests not hymns to Ra or Osiris, but lullabies for children who no longer fear the gods. And you walk to the river one last time. You step into the water not to vanish, but to feel the current, to remind yourself you are still moving even when still. You sit at the edge of the river until twilight, your toes submerged in the warm shallows. Tiny silver fish dart between your ankles, ticklish and unafraid. Across the water, a heron stands motionless, a mirror of your stillness. For a long time, nothing moves, and yet everything breathes. A boy approaches barefoot and dusty, carrying a bundle wrapped in flax. He hesitates, then says, "They told me you're the man who used to be a pharaoh." You raise an eyebrow. "Used to be," he shrugs. "That's what they say." "My uncle says you just changed shape." You smile. "That's closer to the truth." He unwraps the bundle. It's a scroll crudely written but earnest. "I copied your story," he says, the one with the lion who whispers. You take it, read the shaky hieroglyphs and nod. "You missed a symbol near the end." He frowns. "What symbol?" "You tap your chest, the one that means you're allowed to add your own ending." He beams. "Really, really?" He runs off, clutching the scroll, already rewriting it in his head. You lean back and feel your spine settle into the earth. Somewhere behind you, someone begins playing a flute, badly beautifully. The sun dips behind the reeds, and fireflies rise like stars that couldn't wait for the sky. In the distance, a caravan moves, slow silhouettes against the last light. They're pilgrims now, of a new kind. Not to a temple, not to a relic, but to an idea. A story. A silence. You're not their destination, but you are part of the road. Back in the capital, your daughter has begun writing her own reflections. She no longer calls them decrees. She signs them with the same circle you once carved in secret open hole without crown. She still governs, but she also gardens. She opens libraries and closes prisons. She declares one new festival each year chosen by children. Some say she is too lenient. Others say she is wise beyond measure. She says she's still listening, and at the edge of the desert a new kind of temple rises. Not carved in gold or adorned with idols, but shaped from sun-baked brick and painted by villagers. The ceiling is open to the sky. The walls bear no images of gods, only stories. Tales of the girl and the thunder the boy and the lion the pharaoh who walked away. One carving stands out, a man planting a fig tree. Below it, just 4 symbols. He remembered how to kneel. You don't visit the temple. You don't need to. You're already everywhere inside it. Your name is no longer whispered as fear or reverence. It's a smile passed between strangers, a hand reaching down to lift another, a silence shared before a decision. Historians still search for your body. They debate whether you died in the Delta, wandered into Nubia, or vanished into the cliffs like Osiris himself. They never find it. And that's how you wanted it. Because you're not in stone. You're in the choice to listen instead of rule. In the fig trees blooming across courtyards. In the moments where someone almost gives in to power but chooses peace instead. And one day, many years from now, a girl, your daughter's granddaughter, perhaps will sit beneath a fig tree reading a story etched into clay. She'll pause, look up at the branches above, and say to no one in particular, "I think I would have liked him." And she'll be right. Because the man they call the Still One, the Reed, the Unking, was never meant to be worshipped. He was meant to be remembered, like breath, like water, like something once heavy that you finally learn how to carry lightly. It's strange how memory works. You forget the chants that once echoed through the palace halls. You forget the precise weight of the crown, the sting of ceremonial incense, the names of some of your ministers and half your cousins. But you remember the laughter of your daughter at age 7, the smell of your first sandals, the way fig juice ran down your arm the first time you ate one straight from the tree. You remember the quiet, that blessed, deliberate quiet. And in that silence, the world feels sharper. Not louder, never louder, but more vivid. Each footstep becomes its own kind of music. Each sip of water tastes like a story. You've stopped seeking meaning in the stars and started finding it in pebbles, in breath, in pauses. You're not alone either. Others have started walking your way, not to find you, no one really knows where you are now, but to follow something softer. Bakers who leave extra bread by the roadside, teachers who ask more questions than they answer, children who sit under trees and listen to the wind like it might tell them a secret. In a village too small to name, you meet a potter. Bent with age fingers stained with ochre, she offers you a cracked bowl. It sings when it's filled, she says. You try it. She's right. It hums a faint ringing echo when filled with river water. You made this. She shrugs. I just helped the clay remember. That night you sleep in her kiln room, warm and smelling of earth. You dream of fire not consuming but cleansing. A fire that doesn't burn down but burns clear. In the dream, someone places the cracked bowl in your hands and says, You are this. You wake before you can ask what it means. But you already know. You travel now with the bowl. Not as a relic, as a reminder. Each time you fill it, you remember that even what's broken can still carry the sacred. Sometimes better than what was never touched at all. The bowl becomes your ritual. Each evening you fill it with water, place it before you, and sit. No prayer, no chanting, just presence. You meet a scribe once young and excited who recognizes your stories. He doesn't recognize you. He asks, Did you ever meet the man who wrote the tale of the lion who whispers? You answer yes. Was he wise? You grin. He was learning. The scribe nods like that's the best answer he's ever heard and writes it down instantly. You give him the bowl. He hesitates. But it's cracked. So am I. He presses it to his forehead like it's made of gold. Then he walks away, humming. Years pass. You no longer mark them. Your knees grow slower, your breath shallower, but your eyes still sharp. You spot stories in every glance, every pause between words. You see myths forming in the way two strangers share a meal, or how a child draws a circle in the dust and says, This is everything. And one day, perhaps your last, you find yourself back at a river, not the Nile, but a branch of it. Quieter, narrower. You sit beside it. You fill your hands with water. And for a moment, you're not ancient. You're not a former king. You're not a whisper wrapped in legend. You're just a man who walked a long way to find stillness. And did. Behind you, someone approaches. A voice soft. Are you him? You don't answer. You don't need to. Because the answer isn't how you sit, how you breathe, how you hand them a fig smile and say, It's sweeter when it falls on its own. There's no monument marking where you die. No golden shroud. No procession with incense and flutes. No obsidian mask etched with hieroglyphs. Just a patch of earth beneath a tamarisk tree shaded soft and ordinary. You don't even know it's coming. You rise that morning as always, stretching your joints with the familiar creak, your breath fogging slightly in the cool dawn. You gather a few dates, wrap them in linen, and step barefoot into the dust. A young girl waves to you from a rooftop. You wave back. She has no idea you once ruled an empire. You hope she never finds out. You sit by the water as the sun climbs your old bowl beside you, filled and humming. You sketch quietly with a reed pen on scraps of palm fiber. No great pronouncements, no grand conclusions. Just drawings. A snake coiled around a fig. A woman laughing into wind. A single footprint in a swirl of dust. Then quite simply you stop. Not from pain, not from fear, but like a flame that's run out of wick. Your hand lowers, your eyes close. Your head tilts ever so slightly as if listening for the last sound the world will offer you. Maybe it's the river. Maybe it's her voice. Maybe it's the bowl singing one final time. No one finds you for 2 days. When they do, they don't call the priests. They don't wrap you in royal linen. They bury you beside the tree. They mark the spot with a ring of stones. And instead of your name, they scratch a single circle into the bark above open, unbroken quiet. Back in the capital, your daughter receives the news. She doesn't cry. She steps out into the garden, sits beneath the fig tree, and speaks aloud. You did it. She closes her eyes and waits, not for a reply, but for that hush, that subtle pressure in the air that always comes after truth has passed. And when she feels it, she smiles. Your stories continue, carried on breeze and rumor, changed, slightly exaggerated here and there. In one, you fly away on the back of a falcon. In another, you become a constellation. In a third, you walk into the duat and convince the gods to let the dead dream peacefully. Historians still argue whether you existed as more than myth. They argue over where your tomb might lie, unaware that you never used it, that it sits empty, still filled only with echoes and fig leaves. Meanwhile, pilgrims continue to walk the path you once traced, not to worship but to remember, to slow down, to listen. And everywhere your symbols bloom, not in granite but in gestures. A teacher who lets a child lead the lesson. A farmer who leaves an extra sheaf for strangers. A queen who listens more than she commands. In one coastal town, a storyteller begins each tale by holding up a bowl and saying, "This once belonged to someone who gave everything away and found everything." In another, they say, if you sleep beneath a fig tree on a warm night, you'll dream of a quiet man offering you fruit. He won't speak. He won't need to. Because the dream isn't about him. It's about the part of you that remembers how to kneel, how to listen, how to stop ruling and start belonging. The Nile continues to wind its way north as it always has, but somewhere deep beneath its currents and silt, older than pyramids and breath, something shifts. Not a monument, not a temple, a root. Quiet, gentle, and unstoppable, just like you. The world moves on, but differently. Not faster, not louder. Just a little more aware of its silence. Back in the capital, the temple bells still ring. The markets still bustle and the taxes still get collected. But in the shade of every colonnade, there's someone sketching a circle into the dust. Children use it in games. Priests use it in blessing. And for the first time in recorded history, no pharaoh sits on the throne. Because the throne has been moved. Not into exile. Into memory. Your daughter, though still regarded as the nation's guiding light, has made it plain she is not a goddess. Not chosen by Horus. Not bathed in sunbeams or spoken to by the afterlife. I am, she says, only as divine as my silence allows others to speak. And that becomes the philosophy of the age. Universities open not for scribes, but for the children of reed cutters and butchers and millers. Students are taught doubt as a virtue and certainty as a burden to carry with caution. One of the first scholars declares, We are not here to worship knowledge. We are here to befriend it. The temples slowly adapt, some more grudgingly than others. Old priests mutter that the gods are growing distant, but young ones say, maybe we've been shouting too loud. A new class of public murals spreads across cities, not images of kings smiting enemies or gods weighing hearts, but scenes from ordinary life, a mother braiding her daughter's hair, a mason humming to bricks, a man sharing figs beneath a tree. They call it the era of the still flame, because nothing exploded, nothing collapsed, and yet everything changed. A change as soft as breath, but as irreversible as dawn. One day a boat from the southern kingdoms arrives with envoys demanding audience with the Pharaoh. Your daughter receives them in a garden seated on a mat under an olive tree. They kneel expecting formality. Instead, she hands them water and asks about the health of their elderly. They are so disarmed they forget their demands. She tells them, we are not weaker than before. We are just deeper. They return home confused but not displeased, and over time they too begin planting fig trees. Meanwhile, your old tomb becomes a place of pilgrimage but not for mourning. People go there to rest, to leave burdens behind. A new tradition arises. Travelers bring a stone from their village and place it on the pile at the entrance. The mound grows not a monument, but a soft mountain of unmarked kindness. Inside the mural you painted is preserved with care, not restored, never restored, just gently brushed now and then so the cracks can breathe. Occasionally a child will be allowed to touch it, fingers grazing the faded blues and ochres, learning not just what you were, but what you chose not to be. One day a festival is declared not for your birth, not for your death, but for your walking away. It becomes a day of silence. Across the land no sermons are preached, no horns are blown. Instead, people gather in circles and simply sit. Together. Even the animals seem to pause. And if you were there, and who's to say you're not, you might smile to see a world that once demanded your command, now learning to command itself less. The circle continues, and beneath every fig tree that springs up in your memory, someone carves the same word, enough. Not as a limit, as a liberation. You were never about absence. You were about making space. And now, across rivers and deserts, cities and homes, a stillness you once fought so hard to find is teaching others how to listen for it too. The year turns and turns again. Generations pass. Those who once met you in secret forget the sound of your voice, but not the feeling. That peculiar warmth you left behind like sunlight on old stone, like a breath held just before truth is spoken. And while your name fades, your shape does not. It appears in weaving patterns, etched into the hem of garments, scratched into temple benches, traced into loaves before baking. A single open circle, not worshipped, not feared, just understood. Scholars in future centuries will debate its meaning. Some call it the uncrown, others the wholeness. A few more romantically refer to it as the breath returned. They all write about you, they can't help themselves. Some say you were Akhenaten reborn, a heretic saint in disguise. Others say you never existed at all, that the Reed Man is just a moral fiction stitched together by storytellers and potters, tired of dynasties. One historian insists you were a woman in secret. Another claims you're buried beneath the Library of On. None of them are correct. And all of them are. Because you are no longer a man. You are a question. A whisper that ends with a smile. Back in the capital, now grown far beyond its old walls, there is a quiet house beside the temple gardens. It has no guards, no statues, no altars. Just a bench beneath a fig tree and a small shelf filled with scrolls. Stories mostly, and some drawings of people with their eyes closed. Your daughter once sat there every evening long after stepping away from rule. She aged in peace, not erased but eased. Her children grew wild and gentle as children should, and when she died they planted no stone, only more trees. Now her great-grandchildren tend the garden. One boy tells stories to bees. One girl listens to ants and writes poems about their journeys. Visitors often stop by unsure if it's a shrine or a library. They leave with fig jam and questions. Meanwhile, in the far south, a woman finds one of your bowls buried near an old river bend. She doesn't recognize its history. She just likes how it hums. She places it beside her sleeping mat, and each night before bed she fills it with water not for magic, but for presence. And it works. She sleeps deeper. She wakes softer. She tells her daughter, "This bowl reminds me not to hurry." And her daughter in turn tells her friends, "My mother listens to the river in a cup." In this way, your story becomes what all good stories must become: a seed. One that forgets its planter, but remembers how to grow. You never return to the throne, but you've been invited into homes. Not with banners or hymns, but with fig bread shared at dusk with doors left unlocked, for wandering strangers with circles drawn in the dust as a promise we will pause and listen. You are no longer needed, and that is your greatest legacy. You let go so others could hold, and now across this once empire the sound of a bowl being filled is not a ritual, it's a memory of a man who remembered how to breathe. The sun sets slower these days, or maybe people finally look long enough to notice. In the far west near a wind-sculpted canyon, a child asks her grandmother, "Why don't we have kings anymore?" The old woman smiles without answering, then reaches into her satchel and pulls out a worn scroll. On it is a drawing, a man seated cross-legged under a tree, a bowl beside him, a fig in his hand. The child squints. "Is that a god?" "No," the grandmother says. "That's someone who gave up being one." And the girl, satisfied with this impossible answer, presses the scroll to her chest and whispers, "I think I would have liked him." You've become folklore now, part of the mythic tide that moves behind history's curtain. Not the kind of figure who launches empires or demands sacrifice, but the one who quietly insists there's another way to be human. You've shed your legacy like a snake's skin, and in its place breath figs silence and listening. Back in one of the temple libraries, a young scribe is copying scrolls when he comes across a curious annotation at the bottom of a forgotten text. He ruled best when he ruled nothing. There's no signature. He underlines it gently and adds a small circle in the margin. Not because he knows who wrote it, but because he knows why it was written. Elsewhere, a musician plays a three-string harp, under moonlight singing lullabies that don't mention gods or kings, just rivers, trees, and how even cracked bowls sing. In her lyrics, the reed man is never named, but his quiet sits inside every rest between notes. Scholars still argue whether this disturbing Pharaoh, the one who walked away, was a madman, a revolutionary, or a coward too afraid to die a god. But others have stopped asking. They've begun simply sitting. Across the empire, benches are built beneath fig trees, not because someone declared them sacred, but because sitting there feels right. People bring their worries, their children, their questions. They don't always find answers, but they leave lighter. Sometimes a traveler brings a story. Did you know they'll say that he once carved his own tomb and then left it empty? Or they say he whispered a new name for himself into a fig and buried it. Or even my grandmother told me he's still walking. East, always east. And someone in the circle will ask, but what was he running from? And the storyteller, if they understand, will reply, nothing. He was walking toward us. In time, the practice of naming years after rulers fades. Instead, years are marked by moments: the year of the quiet flood, the year the fig trees bloomed twice, the year everyone listened. These are not facts. They are truths. And you've become a truth now, fluid, quiet, never shouted, only passed hand to hand like a secret that doesn't wish to hide. Some say they dream of you, that you visit them beside a river or sit at their fire or place a hand on their shoulder just before they speak a kindness they didn't know they carried. In these dreams, you never speak because your story already did. And it's still doing. Where once there were thrones carved of stone, now there are circles of people sitting cross-legged in sand figs and hand bowls filled hearts open. And this is how you remain, not in lineage, not in gold, but in the simple invitation whispered across generations: sit, listen. You don't need to rule to be remembered. Time, that old sculptor, keeps smoothing your edges, not erasing you, just softening. Like river water over stone, like a lullaby hummed by someone who no longer remembers the words but still knows the tune. And across the land, people stop saying your name, not out of fear or forgetting, but because they've started saying their own. The age of pharaohs ends not with rebellion or conquest, but with a quiet sigh and a fig tree. There's a temple in the highlands now, small, round, open to wind and sky. It's called the Temple of Listening. No statues inside, no altars. Just cushions, fig trees growing from soil brought by travelers, and a bowl in the center always filled with clean water. Each visitor is allowed to sit by the bowl for as long as they like. Some meditate, some cry, some simply close their eyes and breathe for the first time in what feels like years. And all of them, in their own way, are answering your legacy. In a town that once produced elite scribes for royal courts, students now write poems to shadows and debate whether truth is heavier when whispered. One teacher asks, "What makes a ruler wise?" and a child answers, "When they no longer need to rule." The teacher doesn't correct her. In another village, an old woman bakes bread using a clay stamp shaped like a circle. She presses it into each loaf and tells customers, "This one makes you full in the quiet places." They laugh but buy the bread. Even the Nile seems gentler, its currents no longer rushed but contemplative. Like it too is remembering a time when someone walked beside it barefoot and uncrowned. Your tomb, though still untouched, has become overgrown with creeping jasmine. No priest guard it, no plaques proclaim it. People visit quietly if they visit at all. They don't pray, they pause. And then they leave a small offering, a cracked bowl, a fig, a story written on the back of a palm leaf. Once a year at the turning of seasons, a gathering is held not far from there. They call it the Still Festival. No speeches, no banners, just silence broken by laughter and shared meals. It's the only festival in Egypt with no official sponsor, no leader, no choreographed ritual. And yet it's always full. From the cliffs above, it looks like nothing more than a loose scattering of people beneath trees. But from within, it feels like belonging. This is what remains of your rule. Not pyramids, not taxes, not epic wars recorded in gilded scrolls. What remains is a shape in the dust drawn again and again, open, unbroken, yours and everyone's. And on quiet nights when a child asks their parent, "Was there ever really a king who gave it all away?" The parent, if they understand, will say yes, and then they will add, "And because of that, you don't have to be one, This is not the legacy of a god, it's the inheritance of a listener. And long after the sand has buried the palaces, after even the hieroglyphs fade into riddles, your gift will remain in the places no archaeologist ever digs, in the fig sweet breath of a storyteller, in the cool hush of a shared silence, and in the gentle echo of a bowl filled with water singing in the hands of someone who has just decided not to speak but to hear. The day your final story is told, no one will know it's the last. A boy will be sitting beside a river, much like you once did, and an elder will tell him a tale about a man who walked away from a crown, not with bitterness, not with pride, just with his hands open and his eyes unblinking. The boy will listen captivated. He'll ask, did he win? The elder will think for a moment, then answer, he freed. Freed what? Everyone. And the boy chewing on that word like a fig seed will nod as if that makes perfect sense. The story will travel again in that moment, carried not by decree or drumbeat, but by memory's warmth, that soft feeling we get when something reminds us of the good we've yet to do. Your legacy has no army. It marches on bare feet through crowded markets and quiet gardens, slipping between conversations, hiding in lullabies. It doesn't conquer, it returns. In a desert town near the Red Sea, a traveler enters a public house seeking shelter. On the wall is a painted scene, a circle of people seated beneath a fig tree, all sharing bread. The traveler pauses. Is this a religious image? The innkeeper shrugs. Only if hunger is holy. Later, when the traveler writes home, they'll describe the place like this. There are no idols here, just stories. The people speak kindly and they eat slowly. I don't know if it's because of that old legend they follow or because they simply remembered how to be human. You are not a chapter in Egypt's history books anymore. You are the space between chapters, the breath before new pages begin. In the north, a small village school teaches children the myth of the Reed Man as part of their literature lessons. Not history, not theology, just a quiet tale told with open hearts. One child drawing in the margin of her tablet adds a crown to the Reed Man's head, and then giggling draws him tossing it into a basket labeled compost. Her teacher sees and laughs. Maybe that's how fig trees grow so sweet. Farther upriver, a boatman ties his skiff to a fig tree's roots each evening. He leaves a cracked bowl on the bow filled with water, not as an offering, but so birds can drink. He says, I heard the Reed Man liked birds. He doesn't remember where he heard that, but it feels true. Meanwhile, deep in one of the old libraries, a half-blind historian spends his final years attempting to trace your influence. He writes volumes, diagrams, theories. One scroll ends like this: we chased the crown until it turned to ash. But someone dropped it quietly, and from that silence grew figs. He never publishes it. He doesn't need to. Because when he dies, his apprentice buries the scroll beneath a fig tree, and decades later, a girl finds it. She reads the last line and simply says, of course, because by then your truth is no longer a surprise. It's just how things are. No thrones, no fear, no man above others, just circles, just bowls, just stories passed like gentle fire in the cold. You become not an origin, but a return, to softness, to soil, to the kind of strength that sits instead of stands. And when the winds blow hard, shaking even the fig trees, it is your story that roots the people. Not because it was loud, but because it listened first. The land dreams differently now, not of conquest, but of continuance. Not of marble statues and golden scepters, but of fig trees, quiet laughter, and bowls filled with water left for strangers and birds alike. It's said the people of this age carry less but feel more, There are no more pharaohs, no more divine bloodlines, just a world that remembers how you forgot yourself, and in doing so became unforgettable. In the oasis towns of the western desert, the elders speak your tale not with grandeur, but as if recalling a friend. They sit in circles, drink sweet tea, and tell younger listeners. He didn't vanish, he dissolved like sugar in warm water, sweetened everything without asking to be seen. And somewhere across the sands, a merchant hums a tune with no lyrics, only rhythm. He says it came to him in a dream where a reed brushed his cheek and told him to stop rushing. He hasn't run since. In temple archives once locked behind law and ceremony, the scribes now keep a new kind of text. Not records of taxation or harvest, but a catalog of kind acts performed anonymously. One scroll begins, Year of the Fifth Fig. A stranger fed a widow's goat and disappeared. They title it, Whispers of the Uncrowned. Each new volume starts with a circle drawn in ink, always open. Children learn now by listening first. One exercise, sit for an hour without speaking. Only breathe. Only feel. When asked afterward what they learned, one boy says, the world hums if you let it. Another says, I didn't know wind had shape. And one small girl just whispers, I missed myself. The teachers smile. No corrections. In the grand city once built by pharaohs, the last statue is removed, not toppled, just quietly relocated to a museum labeled Artifacts of Ruling. In its place, a circle is carved into the stone plaza. People gather there barefoot to share songs, silence, and sometimes soup. There's a rule: no one speaks louder than a whisper, and no one eats alone. Tourists come and ask, what religion is this? Locals reply, it's not a religion, it's a remembering. And across the river, someone paints a mural of you, not in gold, not in a royal attire, just as a figure seated cross-legged beneath a fig tree. Eyes closed, smile, soft, a cracked bowl in hand. Above the image, a phrase is inscribed in the old tongue. To rule is to forget the sound of leaves. Your great-great descendants do not bear titles. They carry fig seeds in pouches and stories in their breath. They walk gently, they listen first. And when asked where their power comes from, they answer, from the moment he let it go. This is how you've endured, not in temples but in time, not as Pharaoh but as permission. Permission to soften, to step down, to sit still. And all across the land, from mountains to deltas and deserts and villages and cities and dreams, your memory roots itself like a tree that doesn't need tending because it taught others how to plant. And that is the final turn. You were never the ending. You were the beginning that learned how to stop. And in stopping, you set everything free. It's early morning. Somewhere a potter places her hands into wet clay and whispers a small blessing, not to a god, not to a king, but to the stillness. Her wheel turns slowly, rhythmically, as if echoing a heartbeat remembered from a gentler age. You are in that motion. You are in the silence between each spin. Far to the north, a fisherman leans over his boat, releasing his nets. As he waits, he hums a lullaby his grandmother used to sing. She said it came from the man who walked away. He never knew who she meant, but when he hums it, the fish come easier. You're there too, in the lullaby that doesn't need a name. In a mountain village where snow covers the paths for weeks, people gather in a circle around a single leafless fig tree. They've carved small bowls from ice, and each one holds a flickering candle. There's no speech, just the glow, just the breath of winter shared in silence. You are not the flame. You are the circle that holds it. The question lingers in history classrooms and philosophers' halls. Why did the Pharaoh renounce power? Some claim illness. Others claim political collapse, divine instruction, secret shame. But the most honest answer remains unprovable because he loved more than he feared. You knew somehow that the greatest offering isn't strength, it's space. You didn't want to be remembered in granite or lineage. You wanted to be forgotten the way a gentle wave disappears into shore, still part of the ocean, still shaping the world. In the centuries that follow, your name is spoken less and less. But your presence, it multiplies, not with monuments, with moments. A woman pauses before speaking harshly. A child offers half her bread without being asked. A stranger listens through the end of someone's sorrowful story without interrupting. None of these people know you, and yet in each act you return. A library opens in your memory, not one made of scrolls or shelves, but of conversations. Each person who enters must first sit in silence for 10 minutes. They call it the waiting room of the reed. Visitors say it changes them, not through answers, but through the permission to pause. This becomes the true inheritance, a culture of gentleness, seated by a single refusal to keep taking up space. A world where stepping back becomes the new measure of wisdom, where circles replace hierarchies and fig trees outlast marble. Eventually, one final tale is added to the oral tradition. The story of the day the Nile stopped rising just briefly, and then began again stronger, clearer. They say it happened the morning the last person who knew your name died. And from that day forward, no one owned your story anymore, because now it belonged to everyone. A story that started in a palace, walked through deserts, whispered into bowls, and grew into a fig tree in every heart that ever decided I could rule. But I'd rather sit. It begins to rain gently. Somewhere in the highlands, a shepherd cups his hands and tastes the water. He looks up at the gray sky, smiles, and mutters, he's still listening. No one asks who he is. They all understand it's not about a man. It's about a memory of how to live. You're not a ghost. You're not divine. You're not even fully a person anymore. You've become the pause, the hush before someone makes a choice, the softness inside the hard moment. And in that sacred pause, whole worlds reshape themselves. In the marketplaces, bartering quiets just for a moment as a musician plays a reed flute in the corner. People don't clap, they just stop, listen, and return to their lives differently. That is your miracle. You didn't change the world with power. You reminded it how to feel. Your symbol, the circle, is now used by midwives to mark healthy births, by architects to design public squares, by poets to end verses that need no ending. Not a crown, not a tomb, a shape with no center and no edge. In the old capital, there's a fig tree planted on the ruins of the royal court. Each year, children tie small fabric strips to its branches, scraps from clothing handkerchiefs, bits of old bedding. None of the notes contain prayers, only memories. I shared my lunch. I told the truth. I forgave him. This is the new sacred script, tiny acts of stillness. Historians have long stopped trying to categorize your reign. You don't appear in the timelines anymore, but in the margins of a philosophy manuscript, someone has scrawled, he ruled and then he didn't. That's where the world began. It becomes a proverb. Parents whisper it into the ears of restless children. Writers use it as an epigraph when they begin stories they hope won't need an ending. In one city, a group of stonemasons build a circular amphitheater with no stage. The audience sits facing one another. No one performs. People take turns sharing dreams, confessions, or nothing at all. They call it the circle of the quiet flame. A tourist calls it strange. A local replies, "That's because it's not for spectacle, it's for remembering." You live in these places not in form, not in face, but in function. You have become a way of being. And what once disturbed the old world, the idea that a pharaoh could simply walk away, has become the seed of a gentler age. Some elders say he didn't leave power, he gave it back to us. Others say he never wanted it, but the wisest among them say he ruled just long enough to know that ruling wasn't the answer. So here you are, not as a statue on a pedestal, but as a breeze at dawn, a fig tree in bloom, a bowl of water left out for someone who may never come. You are no longer an ending. You are the pause before a new kind of beginning. A beginning where no one needs to rule to be remembered, where silence isn't absence but presence overflowing, where the cracked bowl sings, where the circle holds. It's dusk now. Somewhere by a quiet river under the stretching arms of a fig tree, a group of people gathers in a loose circle. There's no fire, no music. Only the sound of wind brushing through leaves and the occasional soft clink of bowls being set down gently on the earth. No one speaks at first. They sit, they breathe, they listen to the water. One woman, gray-haired, soft-eyed, finally leans forward and whispers, "Tell it again." A younger man seated cross-legged in the dust smiles. Not because he's chosen to speak, but because the story is ready. It tells itself. And you appear again, not as a name, not as a king, not even as a man, but as a movement, a slow turning away from thrones, a step into dust, a breath before words. They say the man begins, he ruled a kingdom built on stone and left behind a world grown from silence. The others nod, not because they believe it literally, but because they've seen fig trees sprout from the forgotten corners of courtyards. They've seen cracked bowls catch rain more beautifully than silver. They've seen children sit still, not from discipline, but from wonder. They know. The story flows like the river nearby, steady meandering, never exactly the same twice. In this telling, you vanish beside a reed marsh. In another, you place your crown in the hands of a laughing child. In still another, you step into a bowl of water and dissolve like a memory too gentle to cling to. No one interrupts, because this too is your legacy. Not order imposed from above, but attention given from within. And when the tale ends, no one applauds. They just sit a while longer, letting dusk settle into their bones like a soft truth. One child curled beside their parent murmurs, "I want to be like him." The parent doesn't ask who, they just reply, "You already are," because the man who walked away didn't do so to be followed. He did it so others could stop. And in that stopping, something unimaginable happened. The world remembered how to exhale. So tonight, wherever your spirit wanders, if such things linger at all, know this: you were not lost. You were let go. And that letting go became the way forward. The cracked bowl, the quiet tree, the circle of breath shared between strangers. That's where you live now. Not as Pharaoh, not as ruler, but as reminder. That power fades, but presence endures. That silence teaches. That fig trees bloom even after fire. That someone someday might sit beneath stars and whisper a story about the one who dared to walk away and smile, not because they miss him, but because they've found him again. Within. And now let it all slow. Let the river still. Let the reed bed quiet. You've walked far tonight through halls of gold, across dunes of doubt, into the hush of a kingdom forgotten by time and remembered in silence. Close your eyes. Feel the weight of your own breath. Not heavy, not hurried. Just here. A fig tree leans gently above you, its leaves swaying like lullabies. In the distance, a cracked bowl hums as the wind brushes across its rim. It's not music exactly, it's older than that. A sound that asks for nothing, a sound that reminds you this moment is enough. You don't need to be a ruler tonight. Not a thinker, not a speaker, not even a seeker. You only need to be still. To let go of the crowns you wear, titles, plans, worries, and place them gently beside you like sandals at a riverbank. The night will hold them. The stars are already shining steady and unconcerned. You are safe here. You are seen. And as you drift slowly into the quiet spaces of sleep, let one last whisper follow you like a soft thread. You don't have to be remembered to matter. You only have to be present. Sweet dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.